call to order the budget meetings for June 16th, 2021. With us, we have the fire, purchasing, planning, solicitor, schools, council on aging, and the parks. I know the legal department is trying to get in, and we'll take them up as soon as we can because she has a scheduling conflict. So right now, let's go to page 24, which would be the fire department. And first what we'll do is we'll just, introduce the chief. Chief, if there's any updates since when the budget was done and turned over to us, or anything you want to inform us about that we just don't know, and then we'll go from there. And thank you for being here tonight.
Oh, no problem. My pleasure being here, and thank you for having me. No, we obviously FY 21 was a difficult year, I guess, for all of us, and I'm glad it's coming to an end, to be honest. And looking forward to 22, and hopefully it's going to be a positive one in regard to the budget. I'm hoping. We worked hard on this budget. We presented it to Mayor Murphy. Mayor Murphy gave it, his best shot at us. And there are some items in there that we're going to need to discuss. I've already discussed them with Mayor Murphy. There are going to be some tight line items at some points, but overall, I think we can work with it, and I look forward to this meeting. Thank you.
All right. Any questions for the chief with regards to the fire department? If you do have a question, just call out the object code to give us as to where you are, and then we'll go from there. One point of note is that Councilor Graney is running a little late. He gave me a call, but he will be joining us soon, so Councilor Graney will be joining us. Councilor Vakins first.
Thank you, Chief, for being here tonight. I'm asking a general question, attempting to make sure I ask it of each department. Sure. What percentage your budget has increased from the current budget to your proposed budget?
That is a good question. It didn't increase much with the cuts that were already made. So I want to say in the 2% range. Mayor, okay. Is that where you're at? I think
yes.
That's where it was at.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. And my other question is, I see that you have 80 firefighters in object code 51105. And of the 80, how many of those positions are currently filled?
Okay, good question. As of right now, we're at 74.
Okay.
And we are in the process of hiring 4.
Okay.
So that'll get us to 78. And I do have retirements coming, so it's going to be a constant kind of filling in the gaps as we go along, especially early on in the fiscal year. So,
right.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I'm just with you.
Okay. So ideally, I want to get as close to 80 as I can, knowing that the SAFER grant funding, I need to stay above 115 total complement. So that's an ongoing kind of hiring issue that I need to stay on top of.
And do you have enough of a roster or a list to be pulling from that you feel like you're going to be okay, or is that a difficult thing?
It's a difficult thing, Counselor. I'm glad you asked the question because we are having problems with civil service. Not a lot of people took these last civil service tests, especially in police and fire. And the resident only list for the city is smaller than usual. We're doing our best to get through the candidates, doing background checks and everything else. And we're finding enough candidates right now, but if we get a larger vacancy pool, then it could be challenging later on in the fiscal year.
Well, hopefully that situation will improve as our health in the community improves. And my last question is, how many people do you have out now on injury or disability otherwise that you anticipate might not be able to return?
So I currently have 4 out. All have a good prognosis to return to work within the next 30 to 60 days.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good, right?
Yes, that's awesome. Yep.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Counselor Tallman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Chief, for coming down. And, my question, as always, is, as Counselor Bacon stated, the health of the employees, because, you get 4 or 6 people out, you have to replace them, and usually you run into overtime. Right. And that's an ongoing issue. I see the overtime was cut this year, and how much was actually expended last year in overtime? Do you have a direct number?
Yes. So as of today, I ran a number before I left the station. I have $58,000 remaining, so I'm going to be sliding in the home plate right on the number probably. But with that, I did not have to come back and ask. So we managed our budget. We stayed within our numbers, and I'm proud of that. And I hope you guys recognize that also, that it took a lot of hard work to get to that point. And so the total expenditure will be around 400,000, Counselor. And that's consistent over the last 3 to 4 years. We expended that amount, having that same amount of firefighters. So that number is pretty solid.
Right. Thank you for that. And I see on the vacation and the sick leave, you're anticipating approximately 5 retirees coming up?
Correct.
But that could also change too, right?
That could also change. Correct. Actually, I have 5 in the budget, and I was just notified the other day that I have 2 firefighters leaving. So that's going to be an additional thing. But I think I could live, if the budget stays somewhat similar to what it is right now, I should be able to live with those buyouts.
Okay. And
moving things around. I mean, I'd have to move money around a little bit, but I should be able to do it.
Now, Councilor Bacon asked some good questions about the grant, the SAFER grant, and trying to keep that number to the 122 now. And I understand the difficulty. We talked to the police department, fire department. People just aren't taking the exams. There's nobody on the civil service list. What happens if you can't get to that number? Do you actually have to turn back some money, or do you? Are you?
Yeah, we really don't want to go down that road with the federal government. We need to stay on top of that staffing number, and we're making good faith efforts. So the federal government looks at that and they look at that favorably. You're going to always slide underneath here and there because people retire, people leave, resign, lateral transfers, this, that, and the other thing. So as long as you're working towards that number and they see that you are, they're going to leave you alone. But if they see that you're constantly dipping below and on purpose, they're going to come after you and try to take that SAFER grant money back.
Right.
You got to be careful of that.
Right, I understand that. And when does that actually expire, that grant? And what do you have till what date?
It'll expire November of 22.
Okay. Thank you, Chief, and thanks for the work you and your crew do on a daily basis.
Thank you, Council.
Anyone else for the chief, whether it's on 24 or 25? Chief, I have a question to follow up on that. So when we were talking about it, when I was in there, the SAFER grant, it was done 2 different ways. One was like a 75-25, and then the other one was I think 100% reimbursement. Yep. And then there was an issue on a calculation for grants, and then you had to do a transfer internally, which fixed it. I guess because of what we've been looking at in prior years for making sure we're on track with everything, have you reviewed everything with regards to grants and making sure we are on par for everything?
Yes, this grant is on par and on balance. We made that adjustment through payroll where it was tracking the wrong amount of hours. We made that calculation switch internally with the auditor, and everything is on par and working in the right direction.
Okay.
In regard to those reimbursement rates, yes, this grant runs at 2 years at 75% reimbursement, and then the 3rd year at 35%. So this November coming up, running through next November, will be a 35% reimbursement rate as opposed to the 75 that we had for the last 2 years.
Okay. So then back to the numbers, we have 74, gonna hire 4, potentially losing 5 to now 7.
Yep.
And I know with COVID and everything else, we can always make a good faith argument. I guess mine is with COVID the way it did and potentially hurting the impact on potential hirees, 7 being the worst case scenario, that brings us really under the 80, unless we, so I guess my question is, what does the list look like? What other things can we do?
There's enough people on the list to do the hirings right now. It's just when you're doing a hiring with civil service, you want to interview more candidates and have a bigger pool to draw from. It's just the pool smaller. There's enough people out there that are willing to take the exams. It's just or take the job. It's just the pool is smaller.
Okay. All right. Counselor Vacan.
I just have one follow-up question, Chief, and this dates back before your time, so I'm not putting you on the spot. Back in the year that we went to the 24-hour shifts, one of the carrots to the council was that it would lower the overtime demand.
Mm-hmm.
Recently, and this is just one example, so I don't know if it's universal and I don't know if it's creating a systemic issue or not, but I've heard that because of the time off limits in terms of how many hours can be accrued, people from time to time get in a situation where they have to use it or lose it, or they're working and not continuing to accrue time. So the natural thing to do is take time off, which then pushes the overtime. And so I'm just wondering, in general, do you find that the overtime has been reduced since the 24-hour implementation? And do you see this time off issue hitting that overtime, or, making that overtime issue a little bit more difficult to control, or how's that working out?
No, I don't think the 24 is really detrimental to overtime.
Okay.
I think there has been an overall reduction in overtime if you go back in time. Now, I can give you some numbers right now, going back to, let's go back to 2016. Okay.
Yep.
Our overtime was $582,000.
Mm-hmm.
You go back to 2015, it was $598,000.
Uh-huh.
2014 was $812,000. Right now we're doing 400.
Yeah.
And we've been consistent. We've been consistent with 400 for the past 3 or 4 years.
Okay.
So, we're trending in a good direction. We're at a good number. I think we've got it dialed in pretty well. And as long as we keep that number there, we should be good.
All right. Well, thank you very much for that.
You're welcome.
Anyone further for the chief? Any questions? Seeing none and hearing none, I'd say, Chief, if there's any last words, I'd just say thank you very much for being here tonight and for all that you do. If there's any updates between now and it'll be Monday, the 21st, that we take up the actual budget at City Council. As a reminder, all we can do is cut. We cannot add to any line items.
You can't change that rule? No.
It's probably a good thing. It's probably a good thing. So thank you for everything that you do and have a wonderful night.
Just so you know, Chief, yours is getting cut more now.
I take everything back then.
Have a good night.
Thank
Have
you.
a good night.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. I'd like to go out of order to the law department. Lisa Ball is here and she does have a scheduling issue. So let's go to page 12, I believe it is. Let me get my numbers in order here. Page 12, City Solicitor. So good evening, Lisa. Thank you for being here. What we're doing is just getting, I know you're still trying to catch up in the law department, but just an intro as to, what you're seeing in the department, what the needs are. Haven't gone through the budget, anything change that we should know about going into the 21st meeting? If not, then there's no changes, but I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, so as everybody knows, there's just two of us in the department. We don't have any paralegals right now. We don't have an administrative assistant. You know, going back 10 years ago when I was there were 4 lawyers, 2 paralegals, and we had an administrative assistant. So we had 7 people in the department, and we still had more work than we really could keep up with. We now have just 2 of us, and I think I'm comfortable saying I think we're doing a good job. We're doing our best to keep up with all the demands of every department in the city. We hear from everybody. We try to respond to everybody as quickly as we can. I often say we're doing triage there. There's always something that needs immediate attention that kind of bumps other things that we're working on. But we're doing a lot. I think we're getting a lot done. We're hoping to have another attorney come in soon. We also have been interviewing paralegals. We've had a few that we've interviewed. Unfortunately, a couple of the people that we had looked to hire were unable to commit to coming in because of the salary as it currently is, and they pretty much told us that. So we did lose a couple people that we were hoping to hire, given where the salary was for this past fiscal year. But I'm hopeful with the numbers that Mayor Murphy has proposed. I think they're very fair. I think they're very competitive. And I will tell you, I've had the opportunity already to look at what other law departments are paying in Westfield, in Chicopee, in Springfield, and in West Springfield. And Holyoke is the lowest paid of all of those departments, even with the new numbers that are being proposed by Mayor Murphy. And I mean, the numbers are here. The city of Springfield pays their solicitor $170,000. West Springfield, $97,000, Westfield, $103,000. Chicopee pays $67,000, but it's a part-time position. So everybody is paying higher than what the city of Holyoke is paying. And I think that's important to note, because I think that we want to bring in people, we want to bring in good people. And we also want to make it a place where people want to stay and be happy working. I don't think it helps any of us to have a constant turnover in the law department. Consistency and having people want to be there and make this a long-term position, I think is important, and it helps all of the various departments to have people that are there and that are familiar with the issues, and they're not getting up to speed, so to speak. So I think that the amounts that are proposed by Mayor Murphy are fair, and I hope that the council will agree with that.
All right, any questions for the legal department? So one thing just for folks at home, there were 3 assistant solicitors. That's going to 1. So instead of 193, 392, it'll go down to 78, but we're reallocating some of those funds to the other positions. So you're looking to have 3 attorneys and 1 paralegal total after the changes.
For now, yes. I mean, that would be very helpful to have just 1 other attorney in the office and a paralegal would be great.
And from last night's meeting, the full city council meeting, we did reallocate some funds in order, because I guess there's a person you're looking to hire, and that money would be there to make the offer. Was the offer made or accepted or no? Or
yes, made and accepted. Okay,
so when will that person start?
Soon, possibly as soon as next week, possibly early July. I think that the candidate is looking to wrap up some things that they have in their own private practice. So just trying to give them some time to do that. But yes, we definitely have somebody we've extended an offer to.
So we have 3 attorneys and we just have to work on the paralegal.
Yes.
And in the office, well, based on the new switch, it'll be back at full staff. technically. If you get
Kind of,
fairly.
but
Yeah.
I mean, it certainly will be a lot better than what, I mean, Jen and I are just trying to do everything right now. And just to have two other bodies in there to help us keep up with all of this would be fantastic.
Thank you for that. I just want to let people know because there were, because of the numbers you threw out and how that's going to change. So that way we don't confuse people. Next is Counselor Sullivan, then Counselor Lisi.
Lisa, with us having yourself a more experienced attorney, full-time city solicitor in there and bringing in the right staff, I see we still have a large number, line item 53010 for the special counsel and professional services. Do you think now with the right people in place that we might be able to cut that a little bit more or at least get started?
Well, I do. I mean, back 10 years ago when I did this, the outside counsel costs were probably triple what they are now. They're still probably high, but I mean, they were a lot higher. We have a couple different lawyers, maybe 3 or 4 different people that are doing some outside counsel work for us right now. I think our outside counsel bill is probably about $150,000 for this past year. We have some rather complicated cases. There's a number of complicated cases that were already sent to outside counsel. So, nothing new that has come in that has been sent to outside counsel. So certainly anything that we can handle in-house, we will do that.
Yeah. I know a lot of this is discussed in executive session. Really can't get into the details right now, but on some of these, even with some of the special counsels and outside counsels, don't you think some of them instead that it could be done on a result-based or a commission-based method where they get paid by the results instead of the number of hours they can rack up by dragging a case out is the nicest way I can put it.
Yeah. We do have, sometimes that happens where it's on a contingency fee basis, mostly not. I mean, mostly it is an hourly basis. One of the things that I've looked at and now Counselor McGee has filed an order on is looking to see if we can do a little bit more in-house by having attorneys that are hired to do specific things but would work for the city, for instance, part-time. And the best example I can give you is that Chicopee does that right now. They have part-time attorneys that are paid a salary and they do specific functions. So one does real estate, one does litigation. So you're paying them a salary and not an hourly rate, and they're doing all the litigation. It works really well for them. I think it's something that Holyoke should consider. So for example, this person that's the litigator in Chicopee is making a $64,000 salary a year, and they're handling all of the litigation. We're paying an outside counsel costs close to 150, and that's just this past year. I don't know what the year before was, but it seems to me that might make a lot of sense to consider doing something like that. I think we would find some really good candidates from this area that would probably be willing to do that. But that's just one of my ideas that we can maybe consider doing with this department in the future.
All right, so I see where the mayor's already cut it a bit on you, but do you think we could get to level funding on this? And then if things get out of control later in the year, see what we can find, but knock this to 100,000 and really press hard to come up with a different approach to the outside stuff?
Well, I mean, I certainly I can't predict what the year is going to be like, but I think if it's knocked to 100,000, I'm going to be coming back and asking for more, assuming that I'm still here at this point, or whoever my successor is would have to come back and ask for more. We're under a contract for one. Attorney Dupree, who does all of the bargaining, is being paid. He's on a contract of $3,000 a month, so that's $36,000 right there, and that's not counting any of the additional litigation that's ongoing right now. So I'm not sure it's realistic to think that we could get by with 100,000, but I mean, certainly, myself or whoever is in my seat at that time could come in and ask for additional money if they need it.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Counselor Lisi.
Hi, thanks so much for coming in, Lisa. I really like the idea of having a number of specialists in the office, even if they're on a part-time basis. I do think that there has been some resistance to that sort of model in the past, because I know that the counselors in particular had discouraged against folks working for the city having their own sort of side jobs or personal practices. And so it would just be interesting to see how Chicopee is able to manage that, because folks working for the city would have access to sensitive information about different cases that they may or may not be a party to at some point. But I do like the idea of having in-house specialists at the end of the day. The main question that I have for you at this point is, just because you were most recently looking at the ranges, I know you noted that the proposed salaries in the budget for the different attorneys in the office are less than what our comparable communities are paying. But does the range cover what our comparable communities such as Springfield, West Springfield, and so on are paying their staff, their staff attorneys?
So it depends on the city. I mean, Springfield is a large law department. It's kind of hard to compare Holyoke to Springfield. They have 15 lawyers there. Right. So, their top lawyer makes 170. They have 3 other lawyers making 130. And then the lowest paid attorney, it looks to be about 67,000 is their lowest paid attorney. In Westfield, their lowest paid attorney appears to be $85,000. Mm-hmm. West Springfield, as I mentioned, the only thing I was able to find on West Springfield is what their solicitor was making, and I believe that was 97. And as I said, Chicopee, they're different numbers because they're all part-time. Like the solicitor makes 67, their litigators make 64. They have a lawyer that's specifically assigned to city council, and I believe he makes 55,000 or somewhere in that range. Mm-hmm. So I guess my answer is, they are making more. The top ones, and even like the ones that are underneath them, all appear to be making a little bit more. And I know we have had some people that have come through this law department that have left, and they're in Springfield now. I guess my goal would be to have people come to Holyoke and want to stay in Holyoke. That would be my goal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then I guess I'm just curious. The salaries are being set at a specific point, but does the range allow for growth that would allow folks that you find to stick around, and like there's growth within the ranges, so that if we do find talented folks to come on board, that we have the ability to retain them and provide opportunities for salary increases within the ranges that the new salary study has in place?
It seems that way to me. I don't have the salary study in front of me, but I don't believe, and Mayor Murphy can probably address this, I don't think he was at the top amounts. I think, he was moderate in coming to the amounts that he suggested. We certainly talked about it, and, we're able to, present something that we thought was well, it's his budget, but just, we talked about what would be, appropriate to put into these line items, given what the salary study was.
Okay, that's fine, thank you.
Counselor Bacon.
Thanks. Thanks for being here, Lisa. And I'm asking this question of each department head, so it's not a loaded thing. I'm just trying to get a handle on how much of an increase from the prior year budget to this budget we're looking at for each department. It doesn't mean it's right or wrong. I'm just trying to get a feel for each one.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't figure that out before tonight in terms of what the amount of our budget is versus
Yeah.
last year's. I mean, certainly there is an increase in personnel because
Okay.
there's this, you know, a suggestion
Right.
for each, you know, the solicitor, the first assistant, the attorney. I mean, all of those are, the salaries are suggested to be a higher amount. I think
And we understand that, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, certainly it is higher. I know that the
All right.
outside counsel has been about 40,000. It was proposed at 40,000 less than last year.
Right.
So it might
So-
even out because of that, but I'm not, I can't say it evens out perfectly.
All right, okay, thank you.
Counselor Sullivan, you got a
Nope.
follow up? No, oh, no worries.
No, it's not up, Todd.
Okay.
No.
Anyone else for the solicitor?
If I can, Mr.
Council Murphy, Mayor
Yeah.
Murphy.
Yeah.
Both titles.
First of all, it's been, you know, a pleasure working with Lisa, and I think we came up with reasonable numbers. In reality, the budget is like a little bit more than 2% higher, even though those salaries are higher because of other areas that were not funded. We have talked about the potential of doing some permanent contracted salaries for various litigation and other factors that I think can give us stability to the budget. And I just, you know, I want to thank her for making those suggestions, and thank you for stepping up. And I don't know if Jenna's here, but I want to thank Jenna. Obviously, they've had a lot of pressure in the last couple of months, and I just want to say I appreciate what you've done. Thanks.
And Mr. Chairman or Mr.
Yeah.
President?
Yeah.
Can I just make one comment?
Sure.
I've made this comment to Attorney Ball, Lisa, from person to person, but I just want to make it to the full council that we are very fortunate to have her back with us with her experience and her work ethic. And I thank her for the way she's jumped in and taken on a lot all at once. I know there remains much, much more to be done, but I appreciate the work so far.
Thank you.
Anyone further for Lisa? All right, well, thank you, Lisa. I know you had a conflict, so I'll let you get back to that. Thank you for jumping on. If there's anything that comes between now and, you know, Monday, the 21st, that you should let us know about before we go into the budget, be helpful. If not, don't worry about it, but we'll take it up Monday, the 21st at 6:30, is the time. And thank you again. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the list, we'll go back to the top, was purchasing or procurement. So that would be page 8. If I have the page right. Hey, Lori, how are you?
I'm good, Todd. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. Good evening. Just like as you saw the first two, just a little update or any comments or questions or concerns we'll do in the budget, or if there's changes that have come up between, you know, when it was given to us, and we'll go from there.
Thank you. First, I'd like to thank members of the City Council for my reconfirmation. A few weeks ago, I was not able to make the public service meeting because I was studying for my recertification test. I passed it with a very, very good score, which even surpassed my expectations. So I appreciate the confidence in the council with me.
Congratulations.
Thank you. In terms of my budget, I'm going to try to get to Councilor Vacon's number. I'm going to say that my budget is up 8%, give or take, with the majority in the personnel services. I have added vacation buyback, which was not, which is actually higher, budgeted higher this year, as well as sick leave. I'm anticipating a retirement from one of our longtime team members in purchasing, Anna Guzman. She's been with us almost 30 years. She may retire on July 1, she may retire on June 29. I do not know, but she has indicated to me that she plans on retiring. So I am, you know, putting in a placeholder for her sick leave buyback, which is at the maximum based on the contract, as well as vacation buybacks for the 3 individuals in purchasing, myself, Anna, and our new purchasing clerk, Madi Cologne. Per our agreements, either through NAGE or the PSA, we are entitled to vacation buyback. I am putting that in a placeholder because with COVID this last year, we did use that money. It was in the personnel line. I was able to work with Tanya to make it happen. But because it is in the contracts, I am using it as a placeholder because we are entitled to that. So that pretty much, that increase of about 8% covers those costs under the personnel services line. In the expense line, is similar to last year. It's maintenance on our main PO printer, repair and maintenance under telephone and fax equipment. This is, we have a new phone system, and if we need a new phone for a new employee, that's a set amount. If a phone needs to be replaced, that's a set amount. Those phones run generally about $100. Because they're fairly new, we did not need those monies. They were given back at the end of the fiscal years. I'm anticipating some activity in that. And so, you know, with working with Acting Mayor Murphy, you know, the proposed 200 gives at least some support there in case there's a breakdown and we need to replace that equipment. Under lease agreements, under copiers, printers, postage machines should be added. And that includes our lease agreements for those 3 areas. Education and training. I did speak with Acting Mayor Murphy that I believe there's a vulnerability of sorts in purchasing with just having one procurement director running all of the bids in that process. And I think it would be helpful to the city to identify a support person that would be able to handle some of the functions that I'm currently handling in the event that, you know, cover on vacation time, and just to have that extra support person, especially with more and more activity on the school side. With that comes some training and having to take some, you know, courses through the state. So therefore there is the education and training figure to get somebody started, at least kind of escalating to better knowledge in terms of purchasing. The telephone line is a static number. I know last year the council cut that line, but it is, we get monthly bills from Crocker Communications. This is our main telephone system for the city. It runs about $2,600 a month, give or take, depending on the usage. So that is a monthly bill that comes to us. Is also in that telephone line is the Verizon, I call it the Verizon landline. This is all of our fax numbers, fire alarms, and the phones in the elevator. I call it the copper wiring because it's not on the internet per se, but that is a monthly bill that comes to us. So it's static, it's set and it's monthly. So there's really nothing to cut in that line item. And then we received the bill for Wi-Fi capability for the Wisteria Hearst. We pay that Verizon bill out of this budget, and that's a static monthly charge. So those are in that bucket of the line item for telephone. So I know last year there was a cut to it, and then it was just, you know, we had to move some monies to accommodate those static bills that come in every month. Postage. This last year with COVID, we were on the downside, so there was some money given back for Tanya. This year, DPW is starting to send collection notices for their shut-off program. So I anticipate this to be a pretty solid number for this summer season with a high volume of mail, as well as into next spring and summer as we wrap up the fiscal year. The advertising line, I base this on our trends of how many bids that we averaged over the last 3 years that needed to be advertised in the Holyoke Sun based on the cost. And then a buffer knowing that CPA has some projects in the pipeline that will need to be advertised, as well as potentially some additional projects with the new American Recovery Funds that will be, coming forth. Office and professional supplies, that is higher this year than last year for a few reasons. One includes, it's a subscription to a document management program called Sign Now. It allows my office to circulate contracts for digital signature. That's a subscription. So I have the only one in the city, and that's at a cost of $360. I'm asking, well, my renewal needs to happen in October, and I'm asking that the in this line item, I'm asking for another subscription for Madi, who is our purchasing manager in the front, so she can complement and assist me in moving documents to various departments for signature, and to make that process of the activating and managing contracts easier. In that line item also is document shredding. Previously, Sandy's office would take care of that for purchasing, so that needs to come back over to purchasing, and that was about $350. And then in addition, I believe I brought it up last budget that I've been trying to upgrade our PO processes and purchasing forms. This has been a really challenging project for myself, working with Munis and with IT to do conversions and get the right copier, and it's just been it's been a challenge. So I have not wrapped that project up. I'm waiting to get my copier plugged in to see how that works. But I anticipate that there's going to be some plugins and some upgrades once we sign off on the project. And then with that, once we go from the old PO forms to the new, just standard 8.5 by 11 paper, I'm buffering in the cost of copy paper for the purchase orders. We do between 10,000 and 11,000 purchase orders we generate in the city. So I'm trying to be proactive and look at what things potentially could be cost-wise for being able to go from one purchase order form to another purchase order form, and what that looks like going forward. I think everything else is pretty, in-state travel. I'm not sure what that, we've been doing a lot of Zoom meetings, so potentially that would continue. And then the bond, I buffered previously for a while, $300. It's been stable at $200, and I'm just figuring at some point there's going to be an increase. And that's what I have to say. I would like to acknowledge that since COVID happened, the purchasing office has been open, and we were in functioning in City Hall. We did not have the technical capability to work remotely. And I think that, from March up until this point, we've done a great job, not missing a beat, maintaining processes, trying to get vendors paid, try to, just keep work going under some very challenging times. When there was some outbreaks, with, in the city and in or around City Hall, our office was never closed. We came in, both my team members came in with me. There was no pushback per se. I think that validates the environment that we were just trying to, do the work and just try to, help departments function in these challenging times to the best of our ability. And I know I could not have done it without my two teammates in the office, and they need to be acknowledged for the work that they've done.
All right, thank you very much. Any questions for Lori with regards to page 8? Counselor Bacon.
Thank you, Lori. You preempted most of them. I only have one left. I was just wondering, last year with the cuts that we did have to make, because we're always in that situation, if you were able to manage the variances within your budget, or if you needed to have any free cash transferred in.
We're in budget.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor McGivern.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Lori. It's nice when a department head just does the whole budget themselves. We don't have to ask questions. But I have one simple.
I've learned my lesson, Counselor.
Do it yourself and don't wait for us. Hey, your head clerk is in the clerical union, correct?
Correct. They're both in NAGE.
Both of them, okay. And are you or anybody in the Professional Supervisors Association?
I'm in the PSA.
Okay, that's all I need. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. President,
Counselor Graney.
just to let you know I'm on board.
No, thank you, Counselor. We see you, and I let everyone know as the meeting started. Counselor Tallman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Lori. Thanks for the work you do for the city. I'm looking at the central copier 54210. Is that something that we had at one time and no, we don't have anymore?
Correct.
Okay.
That was a copier that was located in the hallway outside of the office. And generally that was like an overflow copier from Terry's office, my office. I believe some folks, veterans, would come in later in the day. That was an overflow copier. So that's been offline for a while.
Okay, so that's gone. Okay, so does people come to your office? Are you in charge of any other like copies, or everybody has their own copy machine, or?
So this will be a nice transition into the IT budget. We have done a comprehensive copier upgrade program. This was in the works when I first started 5 years ago. And we've updated and tried to give departments newer, fresher copiers with better capabilities technology-wise. Example, scanning, proper email. So that's under the IT budget, those copiers, and that's a very solid program. I was going to kind of, at the conclusion of my budget, just share a little bit what's in the IT budget just for a global perspective.
Right, because we had the personnel department last week, and of course a new person there. There was something about a copier I thought that came up, and I thought there was something that you had spoken about years ago about getting like one copier for certain offices or updating copiers or whatever. So I'm just wondering how that situation's going right now.
It's going very well, and I can dovetail because I have some things to say about the IT budget as well.
Okay, and you said you're losing an employee. So is that employee that's listed in the budget, or are you going to replace her with somebody?
My feeling is, knowing that we need probably another support person for purchasing, my thought process would be to maybe redefine a position in the office that would encompass some stronger purchasing duties, and some of the duties with the accounts payable person, similar to what Tanya's doing. She's looking to kind of hire somebody that is that has maybe more broader, wide range to help her with one individual versus two. So I'm gonna think about that and what that looks like. I am trying to cross-train my new employee, Madi. She's doing very well. It's a very intense office, as you know, and there's a lot of moving parts. So my hope is that Anna retires later this fiscal year versus sooner, to allow some of that buffer, and then the ability to kind of map out what would be best staffing wise in the department.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Lori, do you want to go to the IT and kind of just touch on that since you've brought it up?
Right, okay, so I just want to say as well, before I transition, that there is a supply chain concern with goods generally in the marketplace. And so as the council looks at the budget and where things are, you should be aware that costs are rising for say diesel fuel, for construction equipment, paint is high. So as you look at where some cuts are, there's a real effect with the rate of inflation and how it relates to cost of goods for municipalities, for anybody purchasing them. So things are going up and not down. And I think the council, as you meet on Monday, should just have that as a consideration. And in terms of the IT budget, I was able to spend several months. This is under the mayor's office, but given the changes in that department over the last fiscal year, I was able to really kind of get my hands on the budget and break everything out. And my hope is that I can share with the council just kind of where things are in the line items. In terms of the expenses, in terms of the consulting, I know everybody's aware that we have Wally as our primary IT vendor. And when you look at the line item 53010, 53020, those are solid numbers. Those are contractual. So in terms of looking for wiggle room, there really isn't. This is what we pay contractually to Wally for their IT service. When you get into software and usage fees, 53100.
Page 14 for people, just let people know.
Oh, I'm sorry. I have the page. I'm sorry.
No problem. No problem. Page 14.
So in terms of what's under the software line, some of the things that are pretty significant is Tyler, which is Munis. We pay $108,000 a year on the city side for that program. We have Google licensing for email, that's $21,000. Office 360 for and this is for all the users. We have approximately 200 users in the city. That runs us about $28,000. Our website, I know there's been some discussion around the website. And so I will say for IT, there are two things IT. You have a creative IT bucket, which would be your website and design. And then you have your general network IT. These are, the functions of the network, the functions of backing up information to the server. And it's really the back end of how all the computer programs and the technology work to where we can function. So there's a differentiation in terms of what Wally may or may not be able to do, but there is a difference that there's the creative IT and what I call the network IT. So under the software piece is the creative IT. Our vendor for the website is called Proud City. And we pay them about $6,000 a year to host our website. And under that line item as well, you've got Adobe licenses, you've got backups, you've got firewalls. HG&E is our primary internet provider. That's under the software bucket, as well as cloud storage. The building department has an e-permitting program around $18,000. That's under the software. So when you look at that number, you have some big ticket items that are in that bucket that allow us to kind of do business. And so my hope is that the council will kind of understand globally what is under that particular line item. Under line item 53180, hardware and maintenance, we've got, I believe, is it 60? Yes. Under that $60,000, we have the copier lease program. And what's committed out of the $60,000 is roughly $33,000. And that covers all of our printers and copiers under the global lease program. Last year's budget, we had miscellaneous hardware, keyboards, laptop cases, mice, that was roughly $2,700. So if you were to cut that line item below 60, you should know that we've got 33.6 already committed in a lease. In addition, what has happened this last year with COVID is there's a significant need for an evaluation to upgrade the computers and operating systems and for the staff. There's compatibility issues with Windows 7, Windows 10, and old hardware. And so we were able to upgrade this last year about 64 machines to where there's a solid warranty. Wally is able to service them and they're compatible with Windows. We are lacking in this area to upgrade the remainder of the city, which is roughly 80 plus computers. Each computer is about $1,300. It's a laptop and a docking station, and that includes the laptop, the docking station, all of the hardware to connect everything, and installation. So if you were just to take, you know, that times how many we need, you're significantly above that line item. My hope is that once the Treasury comes back with more exacting detail in terms of the American Recovery Act, that potentially we would be able to utilize and take advantage of that to upgrade the city and to keep everybody on the same platform and consistent. It was very clear to me during this last year and a half that there's a disconnect with the infrastructure, IT wise, and the hardware. And I think there needs to be a plan going forward of, you know, what does that look like, a capital plan, switching out machines that are functioning and can provide employees the tools that they need to be successful, whether it's remote or just being able to have a machine that functions. So in terms of the IT budget, this is where we're at. I've researched everything that has been paid out. These are pretty solid numbers. And in going to Councilor Tolman's ask about the copiers, we have done a great job upgrading and giving employees quality equipment, functioning equipment that's updated, that also has service. There's no service maintenance agreements. We're saving on toner. We're able to really identify functions of the machine. And I think it's been positive for the city, especially with some of the challenges we have with the actual inventory of what we're working with. And so to share with the council, we've got upgraded copiers at DPW, purchasing, collector's office, assessor's office, the clerk's office, Board of Health, the building department, treasurer's office, the senior center, another one at the DPW, law department, veterans. The mayor's office has an updated copier. Your administrative assistant has an upgraded copier, and I think Councilor McGee, you could probably attest when you were walking around about sometime last year in that office. I think we had discussion on that. And when Jeffrey was telling me he had to fax from the clerk's office and things, I said, well, no, we can loop this in. And then Aaron's office has a plot printer, which is they're able to print and access from GIS and maps, and it's a more detailed printer. They were lacking in that. And so right now, these are all upgraded. They're online. I think it gives the functionality that the departments need. There's consistency. There's one vendor for any kind of service issues, and everything is included, including the toner and anything service-wise. So I think it's a good program. And again, it's under the IT budget.
All right. Thank you very much for that. First up is Councilor Bacon.
Oh, I think Joe was in the queue before me.
Councilor McGivern. You're on mute, Councilor. Still on mute. There it is.
Sorry. Lori, on the copiers, when you say it's set at 33.6, what do you mean by set?
We have a lease agreement.
Okay, so
so our lease agreement is 2,800, a tick up or down. We added copiers recently, so I'm waiting for that those bills to come in and let it settle. We originally started out with, I think it was 12 or 15, and we added 2 or 3. They weren't on the same timeline, so I'm just waiting for that final number, but this is pretty solid number. So for you to take that times 12 months for those lease agreements, that gives you the 33.6.
Not saying it's wrong, but I've been seeing this in a few budgets where, to me, that belongs in a different line item than a maintenance line item. Is that something that has always been there, or is that something new?
This is the first time that this has gone into this budget, so that's a good question. I know that departments were kind of off on their own with different vendors, different copiers. I think the idea was to kind of have an umbrella with one program, and this is where it ended up. Not saying that you're wrong, Councilor McGivern.
Well, it's yeah. I mean, it's something we can straighten out. I mean, I'm not saying there's any problem with leasing copiers if that makes sense, but to me, it's budget-wise, it just belongs in a different type of line item. The police and fire network administration, who controls that line item?
It comes under this is under the mayor's budget.
But who controls the line item?
Well, I would say for the interim, it's going to be me.
Well, this year's budget has $100,000 and not $1 has been spent yet. So can we cut the 100,000?
We cannot, because in the bill that we get every month, the monthly bill that we receive from Wally is just, I think it's just say 31,000.
I thought Wally came under computer consulting services.
Correct, that's for the city.
Well, police and fire are part of city work.
Yes, that's for city and fire, and then the police have they have an individual from Wally there 5 days a week. That's what that line item is.
Police and fire, or just the police?
Police,
So we're spending $100,000 on an individual to be at the police department?
yes.
So this is not being controlled by the mayor, I don't think, or by your office.
When you say control, what I'm going to say, Councilor McGivern, this budget was under the mayor's office, and given the changes with the previous administration and some of the, I'll say staffing in the mayor's office, when I was speaking with the, with acting Mayor Murphy, I had offered to take on a bit of trying to manage this budget. And what I can say is that from December to March, and Tanya will be my witness, that her and I met for hours in my office looking at everything and trying to code everything and have an understanding. I had done this to give some solid support to then Mayor Morse, because I know he would go in front of the budget, in front of the committee or the council with this budget. And I wanted to give him as clear of a picture of this budget as possible. This is what we have done. These are contracted services. I've broken everything out in terms of looking at things. Certainly we can. I think when I was speaking with Mayor Murphy, he was aware. I think he had the backup. I can understand where the council's coming from in terms of costs. I don't disagree with you. Nobody's here to pick this up, and I offered to help out in the interim and to share with you a little bit more about the budget, because I'm not sure there was, communication from in administration to the council as to what this is made up of.
Don't get me wrong, I'm not, maybe my words were a little bit strong. I wasn't trying to point the finger that there's no budgetary control over this. But if $100,000 halfway through this year has not been spent, and this is for a person who's supposed to be in the police department X amount of hours a week, something's wrong. Either budgetary wise or something's not.
I will defer to Tanya, because I know that when we were talking, we were short and there was some movement to try to cover. I can certainly present the most current monthly bill from Wally that breaks out exactly what compiles that amount of $30,600 a month. They break it out. How much is the city portion? How much is the police portion, et cetera. So that gives you a cumulative total. And I don't disagree with what you have to say, Councilor McGivern. I certainly don't.
In what you are doing, and we appreciate that, are you verifying invoices and bills against the IT budget?
Yes.
Thank you. All set, Lori. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Yep. Councilor Vacan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thanks for your details, Lori. I appreciate it. And I'm wondering if you could just remind us, when does that Wally contract expire?
The current contract was signed by the mayor former Mayor Moore's, I believe in January of this year. That was a contract that was signed by the mayor. And there is a copy in my office. I had to get that for a school department. Certainly get that.
Do you happen to recall if it's a 2 or 3 year contract?
I believe it's year to year.
1 year. Okay, thank you. And how about for Proud City?
Proud City it's a service, and I don't believe we have a contract with them. I believe it's year to year.
Okay. It just seems like we've had 2 or 3 websites now. So I'm just curious about that.
Yep, I don't disagree, Councilor Bacon. I think, honestly, if I'm going to speak honestly, I think because this budget was under the mayor's office, there's been a lot of movement and changes in the mayor's department. I'm not sure about, there's just a lot of moving parts. And then when folks left departments and things changed, you know, my flag went up, and that's when I start to really dig and to really get a handle on what was involved. This is not my bailiwick per se, but in knowing that some things needed just better attention, I did take it on and have worked with Tanya to really just flesh things out. My hope is that now that there's an understanding, I'm much more aware of where things were being coded and charged to and whatnot. Now this is kind of under, I feel, a pretty good umbrella to where we can identify where things should be. Certainly, I believe there's more work. I do think that there's probably, I'm not sure, maybe the next mayor would need to really evaluate if our contracted services, you know, are the best for the city. Honestly, Councilor Bacon, I was just, you know, I was a fire sale. I was just trying to get things organized and that.
Yes, and thank you. I think you've put together a lot of good data. So now that we have some good work going on in our legal department, I look forward to and let me put it, a robust contract review and negotiation going forward for our computer services that I think have been very loose. So thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. President?
Councilor Graney.
Yes, just quickly, I hate to make assumptions when we're dealing with a budget, but I'm assuming that line item 53190, education and training, has no money in it because the computer company is offering you all the education and training that you need for these upgrades and everything else. And if that's the case, Lori, are you happy with their service?
I think the next mayor should really have some conversations with some folks within the city to really look at where we are, where we need to be, and who our partners are going to be. I think we can only
don't sugarcoat it, Lori. Let's have at it, okay?
Just say no.
I think honestly, I think there are certain services and certain things that you need to have folks that are vested and you know, part of, in this case, employees. I feel having an IT group or a department would be beneficial. And I think that, you know, I was speaking with Mayor Murphy that for the amount that we are paying, if you look, potentially we could get a small department that would be vested, that would know, that would be able to provide the services that the city needs, as well as the fire and police. I know they're very specific with their needs in terms of their network and their data and things of that sort. So I think it's a global conversation. I do know the school department has their own IT department, and if we were to look at that, I think that would be a good start to look at what their model is.
Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor.
Counselor Murphy.
Yeah, just a couple of things. So I know the last report just indicated that that line item for police is at 84,000 some odd dollars spent. So it was zero halfway through, and I'm not sure exactly why, but it is now 84,000 and something. I will say I've met with Wally once. I'm going to be meeting with them again, and I certainly have involved Lori and others in terms of trying to improve and enhance that service. And also with the understanding that when needed, people in the City Hall or City Hall Annex or other places could in fact have the assistance of the person at the police department to come over and provide that assistance rather than lock them in the police department. So those are things I'm working on and that have been suggested, and I think they make sense. And I think I've got my next meeting with them next week. So I'm trying to have meetings with them every 2 weeks so we can upgrade, make sure we're doing what we need to do, and also make sure we have some kind of control over when we're having software or hardware come into somebody, it's the appropriate time and the appropriate person.
Anyone further for Lori? Seeing none, hearing none. Thank you, Lori, very much. If anything else comes up before Monday, the 21st, you can always reach out to us or email us. But we thank you very much for everything tonight. It was greatly received.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thank you. Have a good night, Lori.
Thanks.
Next is the planning, and that would be page 20 and 21. With that, we have no stranger to the group. How are you, Mr. Vega? How's everything, Aaron?
Doing well, Todd. Thank you, Counselor. Thank you, everybody. Yeah, first time on this side of the conversation. So yeah, look forward to the conversation.
Well, before we get started, there's a belated birthday, I believe, to someone out there.
Yeah, to Miss Deborah Vega. Yeah, right over. Yeah. Thanks.
Tell her happy birthday. Happy birthday.
Birthday.
I did get my memo. It was the 10th was off limits. Don't even try it. So I got the message well. Just let her know.
Thank you, Mr. President. Birthday too. I think you had a birthday as well. So
yeah, we don't talk about that. That's off limits. That's
okay.
But turn it over to you. Kind of like what we're doing with everyone else. Just kind of an update.
Yep.
When you're doing the budget, if things have changed or not, or
Yep.
Turn it over to you.
Yeah, I'll walk you through a few things, and just if I could make a quick comment to the IT discussion. From our office perspective, I still have 2 staff that do not have computers with cameras. So the entire time that we've been in COVID, I still have 2 of my staff do not have laptops with cameras, and we do not have a plot printer. It was supposedly ordered. We presented the one that Jeff Burkott, our principal planner, had found for a good price. And it was decided by others that a different printer a plot printer would be purchased, and we still do not have it, just so you know. Additionally, when I got my, my second week on the job, I was dealing with IT issues, and the printer that we asked for 2 simple things in the copier that we had. One was collation, and one was the ability to print in color. We do print 99% of our stuff in black and white, but sometimes it's good to have a cover page in color for a presentation. And I asked for staple ability. As you know, we print out lots of reports and for plannings and etc. And we do not have a printer with the stapler capability. So take that for what it is as far as the contract. So from my office, excited to say that on June 12th, we'll be back up to a full cohort. We're hiring a lovely woman to take on the head clerk position that has been open for a little bit and had shifted over the years. So pretty much personnel services, the top of the budget, pretty straightforward. We'll note that the longevity line item, increased a little bit from last year because Jeff and John and Sharon will be hitting the next level. So Sharon's at 10 years. Jeff, I think, will be at 25 years with the city. So their longevity increased just a little bit. As you can see on the expenses part, we put forth some recommendations. Mayor Murphy, went through it and, wasn't too bad, just a $75,000 cut from our proposal. So, we're trying to have a lean budget that makes sense. A couple of things I'd point out, I guess, on the expenses side. We are, keeping a little bit of money in repair and maintenance for office equipment. And this is for stuff not covered by Wally. So we have a smart board in our office that was purchased a few years back with emergency relief funds. Not COVID, but emergency action funds or something. The police department, the fire department also has the same smart board as us. We're currently paying right now out of our budget to have it fixed by Valley Communications. And we're working with Holyoke Media to help us set up for our hybrid meetings in the conference room 403, which, as you know, is used not just by our office, but also Board of Health, Office of Community Development, others in the annex. So it's the only conference room in the annex. So we are taking on the responsibility to get the conference room set up. Additionally, under contracted services, this is the line item. And again, I had a good conversation with Mayor Murphy about this. This is the line item that we utilize for our internal grant matching. We also use it for our police details and our appraisals of property when we're doing land swaps, or if we're going to be selling property, or if we're purchasing, or whatever it may be that the HRA is doing. So that's what contracted services are. It went up a little bit because that typically is the line item that we need to put more stuff. If there's any transfers that happen, which aren't many, they usually go into contracted services. So again, that's what we utilize for our grant matches, police details. If there's things going on in the community, like the El Corazon art project that was run out of my office, we paid for police details when those were being put up. So we made sure that everyone was safe during that. Advertising, which of course, was cut significantly. Just for the record, we use these to cover any second notices for public hearings if there was an issue. We also use them for grant notifications and event notifications. And as we in the office are also working on a tourism implementation of the tourism plan that we have, we've been talking to Mayor Murphy a lot about that. That's a lot of what we're going to be hopefully utilizing this fall, be it for conversations that we've been having about restaurant promotion and other things. So that would be some of the matching money that we would use for advertising. We have worked out some good arrangements with Mass Live and the local Latino newspapers. So we do get a good rate, but still we do pay a little bit. And then last one, I'll just point out again, office supplies. Keeping in line with what was last year. And a lot of that is, registry recording, and of course, just the general supplies for the office. Just also note that a lot of the general supplies are utilized from other offices because we do stock the kitchen on the 4th floor. That again is sort of for the entire building. It's not just the OPED office, kitchen, or the conference room. So again, those are some of the additional expenses that we traditionally have taken care of for the building. The last two things I would say is the parcel mapping service, which is what we're engaging in right now with our AGS and GIS system, in line with what that's a pretty hard, fast cost that we have to cover. We did, obviously, we've cut down on historic programs and education and conferences, but there's a possibility that now that, we're post-pandemic, there may be some opportunities for networking and for conferences for some of the staff as we're engaging in lots of different activities, both cultural. Obviously, we have Cynthia Espinosa in our office, which is half paid by the Mass in Motion grant. So she works on a lot of food access issues. We're also engaging in a couple of workforce development issues with HCC and other businesses in the area. So we're keeping that low, but just in case something comes up over the next year, now that things are reopening and not everything's going to be on Zoom, we may have to cover some of those expenses. I think those are the I think those are the big highlights, but happy to answer any questions.
All right, well, thank you very much. Counselor
Mr.
Bacon.
President.
Counselor
you, Mr.
Grady, it'd
President.
be Counselor Bacon first, then you, Counselor Grady.
Thank you,
Um,
sir.
Thank you, Aaron. I'm just trying to ask each department head the same question. You're probably aware.
Yep.
Just what the percentage looks like for the change from the last budget to the one you're proposing tonight. I
The
just haven't
percent-
had time to run through them all and do the math.
Yeah, pretty much the only percentage change, if you will, was additional. And I'm not sure the percentage number right now, but the only thing that we really did try to increase was contracted services, because we utilize that a lot. We also utilize, and then the only other real increase was the 1.5% increase to salaries, which is the cost of living increase. It was 2.5%, but that did get cut down to 1.5%. Other than that, it's pretty much in line, and we did not utilize any free cash, and it looks like we may be giving back maybe around $1,000 at the end of the year in the next couple of weeks. So we pretty much spend what we have and try to keep in line with the budget.
Okay, so you think you're under 5% for a total increase?
Oh yeah, yes, I would think so. Yeah, I can try to do the math right now. But
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely.
Counselor Graney.
Yes, just quickly, Aaron, thanks for coming down.
Of course.
Assistant Acting Mayor Murphy and the City Council had discussed a project possibly being done with PBS television with a gentleman named Jason to promote the city. I was just wondering if you had any contact or input into such a project, and if there was any money in your budget to be found for such a project to promote the city. This would be something that would be very important to promote our businesses and our living situation and so forth in the city. So I was wondering if you had any input on that, Aaron.
Oh, great question, Councilor Graney. Mayor Murphy told me about that yesterday after we had a meeting in his office about a project, the new development at the Geriatrics Authority. And so very excited about that. That is right in line with what we're doing. That's right in line with the tourism plan that was developed in 2019. My office does not have money for that, but I will say that there are still funds available through the grant that the office received in 2019 that the tourism plan was developed from. There's still funds in that we could write a proposal and get money from that fund for something exactly like this. This is exactly what we've been talking about.
I think the gentleman mentioned to us that it would be a $30,000 fee to produce such a film that would be actually broadcast on PBS nationwide that would promote the city. So I think it would be a very interesting concept.
I think that sounds great. And we would love to work with the mayor on that and the council as well. Just so you know, we currently have a stakeholders group, a large stakeholders group around tourism activities within the city of Holyoke, and a small ad hoc group that is working literally today to create an advisory council. And we're hoping that, I don't see him on the meeting tonight, but hopefully Councilor Leahy will have an order in front of you at your August meeting to set up an advisory council for the tourism committee. And we'd be happy to apply for some funds to cover the cost of this video for promotion from the, and just so you know, the money that we did the plan from and the money that I'm referencing was the Gaming Commission Mitigation Fund. So that's where we got the $35,000 to do the tourism plan, and there's still monies left there that we could access.
Thanks, Aaron. That sounds all good.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Counselor McGivern.
Thank you, Mr. President. Aaron, thank you. Nothing major. Just, you said something when you were talking about advertising, about paying for public hearings. What public hearings would that be?
Sometimes if there's a second, basically, to be honest with you, if it's, which we've encountered on both our ends, if there's a mistake, be it an address mistake, we don't tend to have the developer or the petitioner pay again. We cover, so if there's a mistake on our end, in a notification, a public notification of a meeting, we will cover the cost if there's a mistake.
Okay, that makes sense. But the petitioner.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. But there's been as I think we recently had, an address wrong here or there on the way. So yeah, we will cut. We try not to have the people pay twice if it's our fault.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone for Councilor Tallman?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Aaron, for coming down, the work you do in your department. You mentioned early on, and I know we talked about the plot printer. As a matter of fact, I think I called your office a couple months ago and they said they were waiting on this printer. I was trying to get a map of the city with the wards broken out and everything. And they said, well, we're working on getting one. And it sounds like we just talked to purchasing and said that you got one. So what is the deal that you getting a different one or?
No, I think it's been ordered. And I'm glad you picked up on, yeah, we can't print you any ward maps right now. There has been an offer through Wally, I believe, to cover some printing. So we should reach out and take advantage of that and get some ward maps printed out, because for you as well as other candidates that I'm sure will be looking for them. It's been ordered. So Andreas, many times before he left the mayor's office, had followed up with the whoever it's ordered from, the company, and with us. I don't know if this is part of the supply chain issues that we're seeing across, but it's been ordered to our knowledge, but it has not arrived. So.
Okay, thank you. And I'm just looking at your total employee. Are you going to be down an employee in the office, or are you?
We're down one now, but we just hired, we just gave an offer on Monday for our second head clerk position, who is the one that she works. That position, not necessarily always a she, but that position staffs the licensing board. And so, and then generally in the office as well. And she's starting on July 12th.
Okay, so you'll be at full.
We'll be at full, yeah.
Full employment. Okay, I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to hearing more about the work with you know, the project of the tourism in Hoyoke.
We're excited to share it. There's some good people in the city already. I think Neve, who's on here, the senior center director, who's also part of the local cultural council, is one of the members. Lisa Ray from the mall. We've got a really great group coming together to really promote this, as well as the Springfield Convention Bureau, Mary Kay Wydra. So we've got a great group. We're doing some outreach to some of the downtown Latino-owned businesses. We want to make sure that they're represented. So. We've got a lot going on that'll feed that, including the rapid recovery survey that we're doing. And I believe the mayor just had a great meeting last night that we're going to follow up on with downtown business owners. So we're really excited about that.
That's good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Counselor Bacon?
Thank you. Just a couple of small things, just by way of information. Where I'm employed, as indicated, there are long delays in the supply chain relative to IT equipment and other items. So I have a feeling we're all stuck in the same chain in that regard. My other question is just a small one. I'm looking at the DEP compliance fees and fines, and I mean, they're much lower than they used to be. And I know the property out on Mountain Road historically had been a part of that. And I'm just wondering, is this still that? A remaining thing, or is this something else that
I believe it's something else? We're actually working with Tanya to close that one out on Mountain Road.
Good.
Yeah,
good, because I think that's come a long way over the last few years. So
absolutely,
it's a good thing.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and just in the IT thing too, just I should have mentioned this in the beginning too, and I think you were talking about, you know, there's the hardware stuff, which is the cost. There's also the programs, etc. My office, you know, we covered Zoom, but that was great, but we had to pay for Adobe for my clerk. So they're not providing those kind of basic programs that we need to run the office. So we've had to pay for an Adobe subscription, you know, for my clerks, which is fine, but just for the record, you know, we are covering those kind of costs too.
Yeah, it's a pretty expensive contract.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyone further for Aaron? Seeing no one, Aaron, thank you very much for being here tonight. If something does come up that you think we should know about or change, just let us know before Monday at 6:30.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thanks for the work you're doing. We'll talk soon.
Have a great night.
You too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is the schools. And that would be page 30. And I know Anthony's here. Anthony, how are you?
Good evening. How is everyone? I'm doing all right. Thank you.
Doing well. So we'll turn it over to you, sir, and we'll keep this going.
Let me see if I could share my screen here.
You should have access.
So thank you for allowing us to come in and review the budget. I do want to start off by saying that our budget, the budget that you have in front of you, is the budget that's required to meet the minimum net school spending. So on the school department's budget page, we have our normal general fund operating budget, and then we have the cherry sheet assessments that are included as part of net school spending. So that's what we pay to other school districts that have students that live in Holyoke but choosing to go to another district, and then also students that are in charter schools. I wanted to start quickly with our strategic priorities, which are instructional leadership, management and ops, family and community engagement, and professional culture. And what that really means is that this is in draft form, by the way. This is probably the third or fourth year that we've had the same strategic plan and priorities, and I think that it's about time we do have a refresh for the upcoming school year. But I want to make sure that that's a really engaged process. I want to go out in the community. I want to work with principals, work with families, work with students, work with all of our constituents to develop a strategy that everybody can rally around. But this right now is in draft format. We do strongly believe that we have to dramatically increase grade level reading in math and science for all of our students. If you look at our academic data, we really haven't accelerated and gotten the results that we would like at the pace that we would like. And speaking of management and operations, that really is about meeting students, the whole child needs. So meeting all the student needs, including their social, emotional, and behavioral needs through a system of multi-tiered supports, what we call MTSS. That's really going to be our focus for next year, is implementing MTSS so that the students that need the most get the most, and we can meet students where they are in their learning. Especially this year, everyone knows with the pandemic and what we have gone through, the hybrid model and remote model, there's a significant amount of students that are going to have great needs, and we need to make sure that our staff are prepared to meet those needs. We also believe in empowering and equipping our families to partner with us and make sure that they're engaged in helping with the social, emotional, and behavioral and learning needs of the students. And we want to make sure that we continually grow and develop our educators and keep the ones that are committed to being here in Holyoke. One major shift that we're making next year, we've invested. The Bar Foundation is a private foundation that has invested $750,000 in our school system for the next 3 years, and the goal of that, we partner with this company called Relay, and the goal is to really shift the principals and all of our leaders. So our coaches are going to be going through this, our APs are going to be going through this, and all of our building leaders, is to really shift the focus of situational leadership and moving towards having a real laser focus on improving the instruction and what's going on in the classroom, and expecting equity and student outcomes. We really believe that that's going to be a game changer for us for the next 3 years. They're investing in this professional development for 3 years, and we're excited about the results that we could be getting from that training. So I just wanted to jump right into some new investments that we're making. We are continuing to grow the dual language program. Metcalf will be 7th grade. Kelly would be going up to 1st grade, and Ian White going up to 4th grade. We are continuing with our partnership at one of our middle schools, going up to 8th grade with Veritas Prep. So they'll finally be, as many of you know, their model was to go from 5 to 8, and they started with just 5th grade, and now we've grown to next year where they'll be 5 to 8. We're going to be transitioning Donahue students to STEM like we started a couple of years ago, and we're providing extra investments this upcoming year for STEM so that they could really implement a strong middle school model and operate it like a middle school, not like a K-8. We're investing in 2 additional district-wide behavior specialists that could cut across the K-8 grade spans. And we're also, as part of that relay training, one of the things that they're doing is teaching our school principals how to lead data teams in their schools. So every single school is going to have, we're investing in a dashboard, but every school is going to have a data team. And that data team is going to meet periodically to review individual student data and then respond to that data in a way that helps get outcomes for students. So that relay work is going to be a game changer for us. We are investing in an inclusion model over at Donahue. We hired a consultant a couple of years ago to make recommendations on how could we, with some of our sub-separate special ed programs, how could we get more of those students to be in regular classrooms? That consultant had recommended some investments that we're going to be making next year and piloting to see if we can really take that program and spread it across the whole district so that more special ed students are getting access to regular ed programming and with the right supports. We are going to have art and music in every single school. As many of you know, Dr. Zreich had put an art coalition together, and they had wrote a plan, and there was a plan to get art and music in every school. And finally, I'm happy to say that next year will be the year where we will have art and music in every single school. I'll just go over the bold one. So another big investment we're making is every school is going to have at least an ELA and in math an instructional coach / expert teacher. So those coaching positions are really going to be charged with developing our math and ELA teachers. They'll be monitoring a lot of the instruction that's going on. They're going to be meeting with our academics team often and really just elevating the instruction that's going on, because that's what's going to have the most impact on learning. And we're investing in a dedicated district sped instructional coach as well. So this is another very big investment that the school department is making using ESSER funding, is that every school is going to have access to at least one ELA intervention teacher and one math intervention teacher. We recognize that intervention is going to be real important. Not just, I mean, intervention has been important since I've been here, but next year in particular with some students, not really doing well in remote learning and coming to school for the first time in about a year and a half, those that haven't come in person and aren't going to summer school, it would have been over a year and a half for those students. And these academic intervention teachers are really going to work with some students that may be struggling to be at grade level in ELA and math, and work in developing plan to make sure that they're getting them there over the course of a few years. Another big investment we're making is counseling. So we had there's been, part of the turnaround plan had been empowering schools to make decisions, and there was this concept of autonomous schools. But this upcoming year we are reining certain things in a little bit, and counseling is one of them. We've created a counseling allocation. So we took the number of students in every school, we reviewed IEPs, and we developed an allocation for counselors. So it's not a decision point anymore for whether or not a principal wants to purchase a counselor position or whether they want to purchase a coaching position. Those are two things that we took out of discretion, and we said these are two things that we need in the schools: an allocation for counseling and an allocation for expert teachers / coaches. We've also made some investments in the Metcalf Middle School building. Thankfully, some of the students had expressed some concerns, and we'll be making sure that that we respond to the students' needs and make sure that that building is appropriate for those grade levels. One major change that we are doing in family and community engagement is that every school is going to have access to the family engagement coordinator. This past year, there were a couple of schools that were sharing, and there were some what we called city connector positions, but we've elevated all of those positions so that each school, we know engagement and learning and engagement with families is going to be real important to address some of the learning loss that students have, and making sure we meet them where they meet their needs for the upcoming school year. Sorry, I lost my space here. So balancing the budget. Now we can get into the numbers. The net school spending increased about 4.5%, or $4 million. So that was the state's finally reinstating the Student Opportunity Act. If many of you know, the school department came in December, toward the end of the school year, and we had cut our budget by about $6 million because what had happened, was during the pandemic, the state realized they had to make some reductions to the Student Opportunity Act and Chapter 70 funding. And what they ended up doing was they cut our budget by about $6 million, but said, hey, you guys have some ESSER money that you can use to keep level service, and that's what we were able to do. So overall, from the cut, we saw an increase of about 4.5%, or $4 million, and that's even with an enrollment drop of 198, which was primarily in the pre-K and kindergarten grades. Enrollment this year was relatively flat, but in pre-K and K, we did see a significant reduction. With the pandemic and everything that was going on, I'm sure there were a lot of families out there that just decided to keep their kids home and not enroll them in pre-K or kindergarten. They just weren't comfortable with the options that were there. So as I mentioned, the Student Opportunity Act, they attempted to implement it last year, but had to cut us mid-year. And then this year they've reinstated that. And what that means is more money for ELL students, more money for economically disadvantaged, and more money for some of our special needs populations. I'm very hopeful. I think when I came in and presented last year on the budget, I was explaining that, what the Student Opportunity Act was, but I was also real cautious to let the council know that it probably wasn't going to stick because we didn't know what the impact the pandemic was going to have on state revenue. But I think the state really bounced back, and we're in year one of a 7-year implementation. So we look forward to what we're going to be doing is using some of this ESSER funding to make some investments that we feel are really strongly needed. And our hope is that some of the investments we make as Student Opportunity Act grows, we can sustain them when ESSER funding goes away. Our charter reimbursement increased $419,000. And then in the numbers that I will present, we've included about $3.5 million of ESSER funding to be able to sustain our core operating budget. Salaries we expect to go up about 5%. And that's just to maintain our comp model and to address, some of the cuts, some salaries that we had moved to other funding sources, bringing them back onto the general fund. Supplies also are going to be increasing by about $798,000, and that's primarily tech devices for students, cleaning and disinfecting, and then there special ed services that we have in the budget, as well as our arrangement with Veritas. A portion of their budget, because they're taking on a whole new grade, the amount of funding that we give to that school has increased. And by the time we were able to balance this budget, they were still working through how much of that they were going to put in salaries and how much they were going to put in supplies. Health insurance, although it shows up in a separate section of the budget, not the school department's page, the portion that belongs to the school department went up about 415,000, and then our out of district tuition decreased 318,000, but that was just primarily due to us using one-time circuit breaker carryover as a strategy to balance the budget. We spent closer to about $8.8 million on out of district tuition. And then our retired teacher health insurance, this is what we pay for our retired teachers. It's literally an assessment that comes from the cherry sheet. That went up for 13%. So we get our Chapter 70 money, and then they also give us an assessment that says how much we have to pay for retired teacher health insurance. And in addition, we expect that charter tuition is going to go up about 467,000. That's on the school department's page. And then transportation, while it looks like it's going up 2.2 million, that's really because it's a reflection of the cut that we made mid-year. So if you remember, I came to the council back in December, and we had realized some savings in our transportation budget, and we cut that and that out of our budget because we weren't fully in person. So the reason it looks like it's going up is because the only option that we have for this upcoming school year is going to be in person. And we expect the costs to go back up to where they should be, or where they would have been had we been in person the whole time. So the last few slides that I went through was just going down all of these major changes here. So you can see the net school spending going up about 4.4 million, and then all of the expenses that I just talked about. The ones in yellow here, I just want to, I know this could be confusing because whenever we present a budget, we want to make sure that the community gets a full picture of what's in that budget and what's up net school spending. So those items in yellow, the health insurance and the retirement for non-teachers, they amount to just over $10 million. Those are items that really aren't on the school department page that you see in front of you. They're in the benefits section of the budget, but that's our portion of it. So I think that when we present financial information, it's such a large dollar amount that I think it's really important to see, especially when you see health insurance going up over the course of every year. It's important to include these costs when we're presenting our financial information. So this is this is just the net school spending calculation. So you can see that net school spending is provided to us. The state tells us what net school spending is. It is $94.2 million. And this is how we come up with the school department's appropriation that you see in front of you. We back off $148,000 that we pay for city admin services. So that's like services for the treasurer's office, services for Lori's procurement office, and the auditor's office. That's money that the school department gives to the city because we, quite frankly, we benefit from those services. They help convert our purchase orders, print our checks. And then to get our adjusted net school spending, we have to add the charter reimbursement that we get. That's primarily for new charter school students. You add transportation, and then adult education and the central office lease, and then this Medicaid and other, which is really what we pay a Medicaid vendor to come in and do all of our Medicaid billing. And then the city gets, I believe it's 1.2 million. Don't quote me on the amount, but the city gets revenue for this service. So this is the city paying for the service. We put it in the school department's budget. We pay the vendor, and then the city ends up getting the 1.2 million in revenue. It doesn't come to the school department. And then you back out the expenses that I mentioned, the ones that are in other pages of the budget book, insurance and retirement, and you're left with, and those are 10 million, and then you get the 94,520,665, which is what you see in front of you in the mayor's budget proposal. I did want to quickly note that, so this is what you actually see in your budget, sorry. the next slide here that I wanted to show was so what we adopted last year was a $93.8 million budget, but mid-year we ended up getting a cut of about $6 million. So Ms. Vacan, I know you're going to ask what was the increase. This is an important slide. So the increase from what our original budget was of 93.8, our increase to what our appropriation is right now is only 0.7% of an increase. Now, if you compare our current budget net school spending amount to what we were cut to, then that's a 7% increase. But when we were cut, what really ended up happening is we used other funding sources so that we can maintain and keep the same services that we had already started the school year. We were halfway through the school year, and it was pretty clear that yes, we were getting this cut, but there was some federal money coming to be able to keep schools open and keep the staffing the same for what we had and what we had begun with at the beginning of the year.
I'm following you. Thank you.
Yep. So considerations when balancing, really, this was a year where we really didn't go deep in cutting. I mean, I've been doing school finance for probably 15 years right now. And every year I've always been in a situation, since I've been in Holyoke, we were in a position where we were cutting $4 million, $5 million out of the budget. And that's not a really good situation to be in. But this year, because we received this ESSER federal dollars, and because we know that there was a lot of trauma inflicted in the pandemic with our students and our families, and we got a lot of catching up to do, this wasn't a year that we were gonna cut. So we asked all of our department heads to submit level service budgets, and then separately we asked them to develop what investments would you make if we had additional money to invest. We asked that of our principals, and we asked that of all of our department heads, and we were able to fund all of our level service funding based on our enrollment, and then we were able to pick things off of the new investments tab and fund them on ESSER. Again, so that hopefully Student Opportunity Act catches up to it. So we're making a lot of high-level assumptions here. This budget information that we present is based on the House Ways and Means. I know the Senate released their budget, but it was very minimally different, and we didn't go back and make adjustments. As we always do, we'll work with the auditor when the state finalizes their budget. And that's usually around, last year it was really late, it was in December, but in a normal year, that's usually around July 2nd. We work with Tanya, and if there's any changes to the House Ways and Means budget, we'll be sure to come back to the council and let them know what those changes were and update our appropriation accordingly. We're also assuming that the city's gonna meet their minimum net school spending requirement. Circuit breaker's not gonna get cut. Title I's not going to get cut, and then that our utility and other projections are consistent with what we projected in April. So the majority of the budget comes from Chapter 70 state aid. That's about 88%, and then only 12% comes from local taxes. And according to the latest data that's published on DESE's website, we're one of 9 communities in the entire state that is at minimum net school spending or below. On average, across the state, districts fund about 41% above net school spending. And that's just because they can, they might have the resources to be able to do that. And to put things into perspective, if we were funded above net school spending, that would be 41%, that would be about $37 million. Here's just a visual of what I just talked about. So you can see out of every penny, I'm not sure if this is a penny or a gold dollar coin, I don't know, but 88% of it comes from state Chapter 70 funds. And then that small slice of 12% comes from the city's local funds. And here's just a list of where we're at in terms of how much money comes from Chapter 70 versus local. We're third. We usually go back and forth with Springfield. Lawrence is always first. They only get, their local government and local taxes pay for only 5% of the school department's budget. We're at 12, and every year we go back and forth with Springfield for second and third. The next slide is just giving another nice visual to the council on how much of our money, how much of every dollar goes towards these different categories. So you can see that 49% of every dollar goes to salaries and wages. About 18 cents out of every dollar goes towards tuition, 2 cents towards utilities and fringe benefits. Education is very labor intensive. That's where our resources go is to people. So if you take salaries and wages and fringe, that represents about 78% of our in-district budget. Just wanted to go quickly through some trends. I know this presentation is going a little long, but I wanted to share some trends. This is our average salaries. You can see that over the course of the years, we've been anywhere between 61 and 63.5 for teacher salaries. Average healthcare costs, you can see that every year our healthcare goes up. Next year, we expect the average health plan cost to be about $10,000, and that $10,700, and that's the school department's portion of those costs. This is just a bar graph of charter tuition versus reimbursement. The charter tuition is the blue bar, and the reimbursement is the orange bar. And what we should see over time is that orange bar going down lower and lower. What is interesting to see is that if you look at charter enrollment, we were at about 843 students back in 17, and that number's been declining. That's not a trend that anyone predicted, but that's the trend right now. Is there's less and less students choosing to go to charter schools that are living in Holyoke. This is also an interesting slide. This represents the number of students that live in Holyoke and are choosing to go to other community schools like South Hadley High School, East Hampton High School, Chicopee. There's about 421 students this year. But what's interesting is that if you look at how many students were actually living in other communities that were choosing to come to Holyoke, back in 2016, there were 52 students. And this year, we're all the way up to 167 students. And I don't think that that's a trend that many people know about. We more than doubled the amount of students that are living in surrounding communities and choosing to come to Holyoke Public Schools. I'll skip over this because I believe the state's looking to address this with their Student Opportunity Act and go right into ESSER funding. So we did get a significant amount of ESSER funding. ESSER 1, we ended up getting $4 million, and that's what we used primarily to help balance the budget when we got that cut. ESSER 2, we get for 3 years or 2.5 years. It's about $16.5 million, and we're using 4 of that for next year. And then ESSER 3 is about $37 million, which we have 3 years to spend. There is a huge push by the commissioner. He has asked the Secretary of Education to allow districts the flexibility to use these funds over 5 years. And what that will allow us to do is really see how much Student Opportunity Act is going to climb and make sure that we're spreading these dollars out so we don't see a huge funding cliff after 3 years. So I'm really hopeful that ends up going through. And we've actually planned on that. So we're not using all of this money next year. that would be foolish of us to do. We really need to be strategic and make sure whatever supports we put in place next year, we can sustain when this money goes away. So 2.3 million is what we use to just keep our class sizes the same in ESSER funding. We obviously had to hire another LPN just to do contact tracing. I would say that the average case, COVID case, was taking our nurse about 2 hours to investigate everybody, find out who the close contacts were, fill out the information required by the state. It was a very, very, very time-consuming process, and we put a lot out on our nurses this year, on everybody. But it caused us to really make sure that we, that we purchase another LPN to help with that process. We're investing in literacy lab tutors. That's early literacy tutoring in all of our elementary schools in grades 1 to 3. We think that that's going to have a real good impact in helping students be able to read and write at grade level by the time they get to 3rd grade. We've invested in some paraprofessionals. I talked about our investment in the family engagement team and the expert teachers and the counselors. You can see those amounts there. And we also had to purchase another technician. I don't know how the city does runs the district without having an IT department, but with the amount of devices that we put out, we have every student had a device this year, and the bandwidth, the internet issues that pop up, and the reliance on remote learning, and then in-person learning and hybrid. Like, without an IT department, we wouldn't be able to function. And in fact, like the staffing that we did have wasn't enough to support. So we've made an investment to increase that by one FTE. And then I also talked about the interventionists. We're spending about $2 million on interventionists. And then 5 million we divvied up and gave it to the schools on a per pupil basis, and had the schools develop a spending plan, with some guidance. We wanted to make sure there was art and math at every school, or art and music in every school. And we wanted them to think about how to address learning loss and intervention, summer programming, after school programming. So what we did is we've been reviewing those plans and approving them as they come in. But every principal had what they normally had, plus this pot of discretionary funding. So we're really, this is going to be a year where principals have more resources than they've ever had before. And we think it's going to have a real good impact. My final thoughts, I think I'm probably a little repetitive in this point. I did a 5-year projection here, and what I want to point to is really that that line that shows net school spending going up about 5%. So you can see my projections is that right now we're at 94.2, but by FY 2027, if we continue to get Student Opportunity Act to grow as much as it is, we should be at about 120 million. But if you look down here at the ESSER money that we have, you can see we're saying we're going to invest 12, 12, and 12 for the next 3 years. And then by 2026, that funding goes away, and we're left with a little bit of a deficit. Now, these are very, 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 very high level assumptions. What we must do as a district is we need to be strategic so that we're not in this position. We have all these great resources, great investments that we're making in our teachers and our students and our schools. And then in year 2026, we're in cut mode. We don't want to be in that situation. So we really got to be strategic in how we utilize that funding. That's it for our presentation. I'll open it up for questions.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, Councilor Graney.
Yeah, I have several questions. Mr. Soto, thank you so much for coming in. The central, I'm just gonna go by some of the notes I was taking, you know, and some of the budget figures that you're giving. The central office lease, what's our yearly obligation for that, and for how many years are we contracted?
Yeah, so if the council remembers, my second year here, we were paying about $320,000 a year, and I was tasked with putting a task force together to review central office. We had proposed 8 different options for the council back then, and in the meantime, we said instead of paying $320,000, we'll cut that in almost half. And we consolidated. We were renting 4 floors at 57 Suffolk, and we went down to 2. I wasn't a very popular guy at the time because there were a lot of people that lost offices. We're pretty cramped there at 57 Suffolk. But our obligation right now is about $190,000. That's what's funded in the budget. What's included in there is operating expenses as well. Those tend to fluctuate. And in terms of the annual lease, I don't have that information in front of me. I think it's a very old lease. I don't know how many years it was, but I can certainly get back to the council on that.
Okay, number 2, charter school reimbursement, $400K, that's good news. Do you have any reimbursement coming in? You mentioned that there's 132 students that are coming into the Holyoke school system from out of town. What's the tuition revenue that we're getting from those?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I can get you that information. Let me find that information for you right now. Holyoke. So our school choice tuition is $1,055,938.
1,500,000, did you say?
$1,055,938.
Okay, all right, 1,055,000. Okay, good. By my figuring, now I'm just going ballpark, if you're saying that the net school spending figure is 94 million, the city's obligation would be about 11,280,000 for this year. At 12%?
Yeah, 11, yes. Yep.
Okay, the Bar Foundation is sending us $700,000, you said?
Yeah, that's private money. It doesn't count towards net school spending, yes. And
I understand that. Could I get a copy of the Bar Foundation grant and the curriculum frameworks?
I don't think they're developing curriculum. They're not developing curriculum framework. They're training our principals, but I can certainly get you that. Yes.
You know, whatever obligations they're tying to the grant, I'd like to see.
Okay.
Let's see. Okay, the city's, okay. As far as the curriculum is concerned, our parents are being apprised of curriculum updates.
Yeah, paras are included in our professional development. In fact, one of the investments we made this upcoming year is paraprofessional. We have 4 professional development days at the beginning of the school year. And normally paraprofessionals only go to 2 of those days. And we've made an investment to make sure that they can go to all 4. We really strongly believe that paraprofessionals are a huge part of what we do and important in student success. So that, yes, they're going to get training just like our teachers are at the beginning of the school year.
Okay. I've just got a few things here that I want to. The transportation cost, the council voted that to extend the transportation cost for 2 years. Could you give me a projected cost of the transportation for the next 2 years, or is it too soon when you, is it too soon to get those figures?
I can get them to you. Like what the council voted on last night is going to allow me to negotiate a nominal increase with the vendor. I did provide the city council with a projection on that contract, but I could.
Right, you said somewhere between 4 to 6% as opposed to 13 to 20% if we went out to bid.
Yep, we're gonna get that for sure. I will certainly do a projection on that and submit it.
Okay, my last question, special ed, is the state coming through with the higher percentage for special ed costs? Or are we still way under budget with special ed?
There's an attempt. I mean, they did make a change to the Student Opportunity Act. In my opinion, it didn't address the, particularly a district like Holyoke that has 26% of its students that are identified as special ed students. Right. They have an assumed rate that they take your total population and they multiply it by, I believe it's 3.8%. And
so they haven't changed the formula then. They haven't changed the formula.
They bumped that up a little bit. So I think they went from 3.5 to 3.8, and then there's that was 1 year out of a 7-year change. Eventually,
what's the gap? What's the gap?
For out of district alone, I would say it's $4 million.
Right, and the gap in school spending for special ed is probably what, in a percentage area, about 22%.
In terms of the amount that we spend?
Yeah, or on the amount that we're reimbursed by the state for special ed.
It leaves us with a $4 million budget gap to address. I would have to look at that percentage.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Anthony. Thank you. That's all I got.
All right. Thank you, Councilor Crane. Councilor Bacon is up next.
Thank you, Mr. Soto. I understand we're really looking at the macro tonight, but I do want to get just a little bit into the weeds. Because of our back and forth with our departments relative to grant management, we had some similar issues with the schools in the city. And so because that's not money that we can really reconcile after the fact, I'm wondering if we've been able to accomplish the communication and collaboration with our auditor and your department so that that problem will be eliminated going forward in this budget.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would respectfully disagree that it can't be reconciled and say that it could and should be reconciled, and that my team is fully committed to helping with that process.
Okay, so you're saying that you think within the budget, it will be able to be, how do I want to say it, balanced out within the budget instead of after the fact?
It could and should be, and we're ready to work with the auditor. We need to work together to do that.
Okay,
I know we got a list of fund deficits. I want to commend Tiara. She worked, I would probably say, 2 months out of this year, just getting all of those funds reconciled on our end. We sent information down to the auditor's office, and there's some, there's some things that need to get fixed on their end, and we're fully committed to doing that. Listen, I don't want to be in front of city council talking about hitting free cash on any of the school department stuff. The majority of the stuff on that list is ancient, and I'd love to be able to just do whatever we need to do to fix the whatever can't be reconciled that's too far back. I'm I've been expressing that. I'm willing to do whatever we need to do that, so that the school department isn't a reason that the city's free cash is hit, because that shouldn't happen. That should not happen in any year, especially the way we run the school department finances. All of our grants are reimbursable grants, so we don't spend money that we don't have, and our accounting software doesn't allow us to spend money that we don't have. So those things just should not happen. And I'm fully committed, Tiara is fully committed to doing our part and to working with the city to fix these issues and resolve them in a timely fashion. Love to get a clean slate,
Right.
and then get into a process where, hey, here's what we got this month. What do you got? Let's fix it. And let's
Exactly.
move on.
Okay.
And that way
Okay,
you're not
great.
cleaning up 20 years.
I hope,
Yeah.
It sounds like overall we're making progress in that regard, and it seems like we're getting closer and closer to being there. So thank you.
Counselor Lisi.
Thanks so much for coming down this evening, Anthony. It really seems like the school department is doing a lot in terms of investments in teachers, staff, and the way that they're working with data. So it seems like the payoff, if you will, in terms of student achievement is going to be there. And I really liked hearing about how you're working to structure those investments over time so that they are sustainable. I have, similar to Councilor Vacan, a micro level sort of note here. And I'm raising this as a parent in the public schools. I know that the Holyoke Public Schools have a really generous universal access program for breakfast and lunch. And I love the fact that it's universal and that there's no stigma or, differences attached to who's receiving it. However, we're finding that our family and other families that we're in touch with are a little bit inundated with the amount of meals that are coming home from school. And I would wonder if there's a way to create an opt-out so that there is that cost savings. So if we weren't, giving food to those who don't actually have the need for it at the level that we are. I understand that part of it's probably a part of COVID, but I would imagine that there would be some savings there if we could create an opt-out for the district, for parents in the district.
Yeah, I mean, I worry about encouraging families not to. There is this perception that not taking a meal, or that taking a meal you're actually taking from somebody else that needs it, and that's not really the case with our food service program. So the food service program, because we're a district that is part of the community eligibility program, 100% of our students eat for free, and we get federal reimbursement for every meal that we serve. And what we do is we hire a company, Sodexo, to come in and say, okay, here's how much reimbursement per meal you get. We will provide those meals, and we'll meet all of the federal nutrition guidelines, and we'll do it in a way that's cost neutral. In fact, we'll return money to the district so that you can invest in, we did, every school had a salad bar last year that wasn't part of the reimbursable meal. We did, we invested in trying to do everything we can to provide better options. And so there is no cost savings in not taking a meal. But I also will say that we're not forcing meals on students. Like, students have every right to not take the meals home or not eat, and we don't record those as a meal served because we can't. So yeah, I would say that right now our participation is about 45%. In a normal school year, we're well above 80%, and in some schools above 90%, which is where we want to be. We have a community with a lot of food insecurity, and when we were in the pandemic in the remote model, only 11% of our families were taking advantage of that. Mm-hmm. And that was a sad number to see for me. I'm used to seeing 90%, and that food service is one of the departments that, you know, as a CFO, I really took pride in. It's like, you know, I could work with these numbers and transportation and this and that, but like to actually go to a school, seeing kids eating, smiling, and that's something I got a lot of fulfillment out of. And to see it go from 90% to 11% and like that, it was really sad. And we worked really hard. Like, how could we make these meals better? How could we package them in a way that they look more appealing? How could, you know, and how could we reach? I mean, I could say that once we had our shutdown, like our food service, they were heroes, our food service department. They stepped up to the plate, and when, you know, when everything was shut down, they were working, they were out there serving meals to families. So I wouldn't encourage families to not take advantage of it out of fear that you're taking from somebody else or that you're being wasteful. If there are families that need it, we want to provide it.
Yeah, I do want to, you know, just offer that perspective that if there is a way to save funds, then that could be explored. I do also want to recognize that it left a real impression upon me that even in the earliest days of lockdown, the schools were providing 2 meals a day, several times a week, and that they really never skipped a beat for our family. So I do want to recognize that and give you all some kudos for providing and maintaining that service, even in the most difficult of times. Thank you.
Counselor McGivern.
Thank you, Mr. President. And Anthony, welcome. And once again, greatly appreciate your transparency with the budget, your explanation of the budget and the issues. And as always, the overall picture of the public schools, which I think many of us are supporters for all the right reasons. So some of the thoughts and comments I want to talk about this evening are more of a budgetary, you know, type approach than in prior years. But the demographics of the school population, do you keep the demographics of the families or students?
Yes, we do. If you're gonna ask specific questions about that, I'll have to look it up.
You don't have to look it up, but I'm guessing the average income per family is on the low side.
Absolutely.
Okay, that is the 2 other cities that you mentioned, Lawrence and Springfield.
Absolutely.
And knowing that Holyoke is, I'm not sure these past 2 years, but has fallen as the lowest average per income per family in the entire state.
Yeah,
how many?
72% of our families that are below the poverty line.
Family shelters. How many of our students come from are living in family shelters?
That's a hard question to answer, like at a snapshot in time, because it's so fluid. A family, we do have a significant homeless population. I would say that we touch about 500 students throughout the year. But on any given day, that number could, it's not 500, at a time. It's 500 throughout the whole year. There's a lot of transiency with families. I don't like to use the term homeless. Families that are experiencing displacement.
Which is a good way to put it. I appreciate that. But it's safe to say. I'm just trying to think out loud about what we're facing as a city, and I consider the public schools as part of the city despite receivership. And I think we're in it together. I understand the separation of budgets from a state point of view wasn't always like that, but that's not what tonight is about. Not that history anyways. But I think you mentioned other communities when it comes to net school spending, are paying more than what their net school spending mandate is. But I would think it's also safe to say that those communities, the average income per family is a lot different than Holyoke, Lawrence, and Lowell.
Absolutely.
And I've always said this, is Holyoke, Lawrence, and Lowell didn't create poverty. We service poverty.
Yep.
That doesn't mean that the person who lives in an affluent community across the river from us, or downriver from us, or down from Springfield or around Lawrence isn't responsible for the paying of educational dollars for people who come to our communities because they know that we have affordable housing, a good way of being near services, because they may not have transportation options like most families do. And we, the gateway communities, I guess we're referred to, provide that service, including education. So does it make sense that Chapter 70's dollars should reflect that?
It absolutely should. Yeah, I think that that's what the Student Opportunity Act is trying to address. So there
To
was
readdress, yeah. The only time it gets really changed is when they end up in the courts, and we all know that. I'm not
Right.
suggesting that, but that's the last time we saw a real change was the lawsuit of the I think it was the 70s or 80s. But net school spending is getting scary. You know, I think we want to spend a portion of our tax dollars on education, but you look at it this year, it's up $4 million. You know, it's ironic. Sped costs is $4 million, up $4 million, right?
Yeah.
26% of our school population. It's ironic that it looks like your salaries are up $4 million. Did I catch that through your slides?
2.5.
2.5?
Yeah, the city's local contribution is only up 172,000. So the big increase is on Chapter 70.
And the other irony is the city side of the budget has only a $3.8 million deficit that we need to cut to balance the budget. I just don't get it sometimes. You know, the way when you tell us we don't get those reimbursements from charter schools that we're supposed to. You know, we don't get the total dollars of what our real sped population is, and yet we seem to be embarrassed by our net school spending. And I think our net school spending is the in-kind service we do to the state, allowing affluent communities not to service poverty the way that we service poverty. You know, I've said it, Anthony, we could become our own state and live off the tax dollars coming out of the Holyoke Mall. The state gets those tax dollars. You know, we don't see them back at the rate that we should. We don't see shared revenue from the federal government that we used to see. And yet we're told, you know, we're not doing the right jobs with education. We're told that we're not funding it correctly. Well, if those projected net school spendings between now and 2027 hold true, you're not going to have to worry about Holyoke, because the state's going to own all of us. Something needs to change. Not what you're doing as an educator, not what the public schools are doing as education, but the formula for the way we spend money in this state and the way money should be spent in education needs to reflect the ideologies of what I've just expressed. Any way you can help out the city this year?
Not without falling below net school spending.
We fall below
I
net
agree
school
with
spending,
you.
what happens?
I agree with you wholeheartedly. I mean, the increase on the local contribution was only 172,000, which was 1.5%. And honestly, the whole net school spending and Student Opportunity Act, and even the fact that we're getting ESSER money, you know, in my opinion, this is all money that was due to Holyoke, and that Holyoke Public Schools and communities like Holyoke should have been getting all along. This pandemic really just highlighted some of the issues that have always existed in Holyoke. It just highlighted it in other areas of the country. So now people are paying attention and saying, wait a minute, we need to do something. We need to implement Student Opportunity Act. We need this ESSER funding. I would say that I think there's a clause in I know there's a clause in the ESSER funding law that would allow me to take that $172,000 increase and $172,598 and use ESSER money instead of using the city's local contribution. So if you're asking, like, is there anything that we can do? There is a mechanism for us to say, you know what, the city's local contribution is going up $172,598. We could legally take that and shift it to this ESSER funding.
Well, if you could take a look at that and maybe talk with Mayor Murphy, I'd appreciate that, because
Sure.
we're in dire straits this year.
Sure.
And if we start, well, we got to start looking at how to balance that budget, and it's not going to be easy.
Yeah.
Anthony, thank you for the work you do.
Yeah.
I'm sorry we have to talk frank about budget things, but that's the way it is. And but we do appreciate your efforts, and greatly appreciate your efforts. I sincerely, again, thank you for your transparency when it comes to the budget.
Yeah, thank you, Councilor McGivern. You always impress me with some of the questions you ask and your knowledge around school funding, and I really appreciate that. So anything we can do to help, we will. One thing I will commit to, just like I did last year, if we have any savings in transportation, there's next year, there's no desire on our part to keep any of those savings, so we can monitor those costs throughout the year. And if similar to what we did this year, come January, if there is a projected surplus or anything like that, I'd be happy to return that to the city and not keep it in our budget.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Counselor Tallman.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Anthony, for coming in. Thank you for your great presentation on the schools, and I agree wholeheartedly with Councilor McGivern about the changes that have to be made. The community we have and the services, that we provide for our students that just doesn't seem like we get enough on the dollar that should be getting. A couple of my questions, it's just not really financial, but social questions. And I saw a little bit on the slide. How are we doing with family engagement? Is there an increase in that, and family services, and how we're connecting with parents and people that are in charge of the children?
Yeah, so we made a significant investment in growing that team and elevating the expectations of that team for this upcoming year. Interestingly enough, one of the things that has increased as a result of this pandemic and the remote model that we were running and hybrid model is the number of home visits that we've done. So because all students had laptops, and there were we did a really good job with our home visits. They weren't physical home visits, but we were able to connect with our families over Zoom more so than we've ever done in the past. But that is something that, we recognize that's going to be a huge part of accelerating learning next year and getting the results that we want, is re-engaging students. Our attendance dropped from about 95% to 87% during the pandemic. So that's probably the biggest drop that we've ever experienced. We had a huge push over the last 5 years to reduce chronic absenteeism and increase attendance. And we did I think like our efforts worked, and it just works in an in-person model. It doesn't work in a remote model. So those investments, we're hoping they're going to pay off, and we're fully committed to partnering with families and them helping us make sure their students are successful.
I appreciate that. And the other question I have on social issues is, with the pandemic and number of the students being home and online and missing that socialness that we connect with our friends and our teachers and the staff. Is there anything more investment as far as getting the help the students need when they get back to school if they're having issues with trying to connect with their peers?
Yeah, we entered into a partnership with River Valley Counseling. We finally have a director of social emotional learning and supports. It took us a while to fill that position. We found her name is Giselle Rojas. She's amazing, and she's really putting structures in place that didn't exist before. In a school district like Holyoke, where you don't have, you're big enough to have all the big district problems, but don't not have all the resources to be able to do it, especially with our K-8 model. Sometimes our counselors and our coaches are asked to do things that aren't counseling and aren't coaching. They're pulled in this direction to do lunch duty or traffic duty or fill in for this teacher. One of the things that one of the structures we're putting in place is that we're making sure that coaches next year are going to be doing just that. And then that counselors are going to be doing just that. So that counseling allocation that we put into the budget is really going to help with addressing student needs there. So emotionally. And then we also have Bright programs in each of wherever we have middle schools. We have what's called the Bright program with counseling supports that students can get throughout the day as needed. So that is something that we thought about. It's an investment we made this year, and we want to continue with it next year.
Okay, I appreciate that. And lastly, as you stated, thanks for the help with your transportation budget this past year, and anything you can do with the next fiscal year. And as you said, the ESSER funds, any type of funding and help that we can get is important. I know we have a big meeting Monday night to cut the budget, and I don't think we can be close to what we need to cut, but any help that the school department can give to the city, I think would be greatly appreciated. So thanks for your work, and thanks again for what you're doing with the school system.
Thank you.
All right, anyone further for the schools? Seeing none. Anthony, thank you very much for everything. Have a wonderful night, and if you can get the information requested by Monday, that would be very appreciated.
Thank you, Councilor McGee. And I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank Tiara, who's on the call here, and Amanda and everybody on the finance team that worked really hard. As everybody knows, this was a very difficult year for me, serving as a superintendent and also maintaining my CFO role. And my team stepped up really big, and I want to shout them out because they did an amazing job, and I appreciate them. Thank you.
Thank you to everyone. Have a great night. Next is the Council on Aging, page 41. Everyone get over there. Good evening. How are you, Neve?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing well, thank you. We'll turn over to you because I know we're getting late in the night, and so we'll turn over to you, and if you have any information to provide, and if not, we'll jump right into the budget.
There aren't a lot of changes really that are significant in terms of if you look at it over, say, a 5 or 6 year framework. I've tried to more or less stay within level funding for those years, and so the budget this year, and this is to answer Linda's question, while it represents a 3% increase over last year, I want to point out that we received a 5% cut for our 2021 fiscal budget. So this is back to where we were pre-pandemic, although it's actually about $9,000 less than 2 years ago. So, I try to keep that in line. Mayor Murphy and I went over this. I'm fine with the cuts that he made. Whatever I'm given, that's what I work on, staying staying within. So one of the things I have never done is come back to the council for free cash, you know, not to say that it won't happen in the future, but we try really hard to just stay within our budget.
All right, any questions for page 41?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman,
Counselor Graney.
Mr. President.
Yep.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that as a frequent visitor to the senior center, I just want to thank Narve for the services she does for the seniors, and especially for establishing that food takeout program during the pandemic. It reached an awful lot of people that really were in dire straits during the pandemic, to be able to come and pick up a meal at noontime. And kudos go out to her staff, and for especially Trish for helping people get their vaccinations at different locations around the state. And I think it was great that a lot of senior citizens could count on the senior center to provide these services for us, and we appreciate it. So thank you, Neve.
Thank you.
Counselor Lisi.
Thank you. I was going to make a similar comment. Neve, I actually think that your department was one of the most innovative throughout the pandemic in terms of the what's the word? The resiliency and the agility with which you shifted a lot of your services and outreach and resources to serve the seniors. And I just want to publicly acknowledge that it did not go unnoticed, the way that you really were a partner for getting services to the seniors and, you know, making sure that they were not isolated in those moments where we were under lockdown and working to social distance. So thank you for that.
Saying that, I will take a moment just to acknowledge we have a great team at the Council on Aging, and we pivoted more times this year than I can count. Most recently helping take the lead on getting folks in Holyoke vaccinated in our collaboration with the Board of Health and Action Ambulance. But I couldn't do it without all of the wonderful folks that I work with. And that actually, beyond paid staff, you know, we had some of our volunteers come in during some of this and help us out as well. So I'm just grateful. I'm grateful actually that we're getting back to something more typical as well. It's nice to welcome everybody back.
Counselor McGivern.
Thank you, Mr. President. Nave, thank you very much. Just a couple of minor questions. Gas and electric energy costs. I understand this year with COVID, it changed everything. But if you go back to fiscal 2020, it looks like a slight increase projected for this year. Is there any reasons for that?
Yes. 2 years ago on that 2020 budget, let's see. Well, some of it was in conjunction with the HG&E and figuring out a better way of calculating, because we actually, and even at 49, we're likely to be a little bit short, because if you look at what we expended in 2019, it was $50,988. So I say this every year. I'm always hopeful that we'll go down a little bit because it'll be not as cold or not as hot, but 49 may not even fully cover it, actually.
In professional health services, could you just describe that to us?
Yes, that helps to support the instructors that we use to teach Tai Chi and yoga, all of those kinds of classes, line dancing. I can't even think of all of them right now. It's a lot. And that only pays for part of it. So about half of what we pay the instructors comes out of our state formula grant.
And Councilor Graney does participate in the line dancing?
I'm not going to comment.
Thank you for your answers.
McGivern, I knew you were going to go there. I knew you were going to go there.
I was impressed that it was quiet, so it means yes. No, I'm just kidding. Anyone further for the Council on Aging? Counselor Tomlin, sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Nave, welcome. Thank you for coming down and waiting patiently. I'm looking at the motor vehicle fuel 54800, and I see the mayor cut it by about 1,000. And I know you use a lot of fuel. You driving people around with your vehicles. How is that going to pan out, especially with costs going up in gasoline?
You know, I have no way of knowing for sure. That was one that the mayor and I talked about, and he said, do you think you can try to make it work? And I said, I will try. And he said, if not, then, you know, he'll find what we need later. That being said, we do charge a small fee when we transport folks. You know, it's $1 each way. And so I do have a separate transportation account that if I needed to reach into that to help cover some of the transportation costs, we have a plan B. So I think we'll be fine.
Okay. And on your employees, are you keeping the same amount of staff pretty much?
We are.
In your budget?
Yeah.
So everybody's still there? Okay. And as just sort of for the public, are you fully pretty much open now for the lunches now in-house, or are you still doing some takeout?
So we are fully open. Everything is running more or less as it did pre-shutdown. But we are continuing our grab and go lunch service, which is still very popular because there are folks who aren't ready to come back yet. So
right.
We are continuing that. And that's a bit of a stretch for us right now. We just started our in-person lunches again this week, and we're also now doing this grab and go. You know, that's still happening. So it's a stretch, but we're making it work, and we'll keep it going for as long as people need it or even want it. One of the thoughts that I had was, wouldn't that be a nice option for folks in the winter when they don't want to have to get out and come into the center? They can just drive by, pick up their meal, and go. So some of the things we learned during all of this is that you know, there are lots of different ways to do things, and some of them might stick even into the future.
Yeah, appreciate that. And also, thank you for the work. I got an opportunity to come down there a couple of times during the vaccination. I brought a family member down and did see the Action Ambulance, talked to Sean, the Board of Health, and the crews that you had there. I think the nursing group from Hoyle Community College and other nursing areas really, and your staff did a fantastic job. I was really impressed, and really helped to get a lot of our citizens vaccinated, you know, in a really a good time frame. So I really appreciate the work you did there. And even though I don't get down there as much as Councilor Graney, every now and then I'll stop in for a coffee, and stopped in there last week for a quick coffee, and really good to be back in there and to see some of the people and the programs that you do run there is really a great thing for our seniors, and I really appreciate your work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone further for page 41? Seeing none. Did I miss something? No. Oh, sorry. I was looking down. Seeing none. Once again, thank you very much for everything. Have a wonderful night. If something does come up, change or anything, please let us know. Monday, we'll be taking up the budget.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Last on for tonight is Park and Rec, page 44. Terry's here.
Make a motion for Terry Shepherd being last that we double her budget.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay, thanks. Bye.
Just give us a swimming pool. That's all.
Actually, can I just jump right in?
Sure, go ahead, Terry.
Our Linda, I don't have a percentage for you just because so many things have changed.
Okay, no problem.
Yep, last year we're service-based, we're program-based, so we didn't have many programs going last year, so all of our expenses were less.
Right. Understood.
This year, percentage-wise, our expenses are lower than I think they've been in years. But our personnel costs have definitely risen. We're opening the outdoor pool this year for the first time in 5 years. We've had swim programs inside the high school, but our expenses triple our personnel expenses when we open the outdoor pool. It's open 7 days a week, and every year minimum wage has gone up, which increased our costs, payroll costs for our part-time employees. We're trying to get back to normal. We're doing a nice job. Like the council, we pivoted all year too, just working with all the youth groups. Early on, they couldn't have any organized play. They couldn't have any practices. And every increment, every increase, we just worked with Sean from the Board of Health, who was wonderful all year, and the high school, the adult sports, organized youth, etc. Other than that, we don't have any huge changes. I don't know if you have any questions.
All right, so with that, any questions on 44 or anything that Terry can answer for us? Councilor Tallman.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Terry, on your temporary seasonal help 51240, it's got miscellaneous 115,000 and 105,000 was given to you by the mayor for, is that help? Is it different events? What does that cover?
That covers almost all of our seasonal employees. To operate the pool, the brand spanking new pool that we've never used, to be fully staffed, weekly, our personnel costs will be between $5,000 and $6,000. So the lion's share of that is mostly just covering the pool for 8 weeks. We probably won't spend quite that much when you include rain days and other things happening, but that was the biggest increase. That and the minimum wage goes up every January 1st, 75 cents. So that's an automatic increase in our yearly request. And it's getting back to programs. The reason that there's a huge difference from last year because we canceled most of our programs last year. So.
Okay, so a big bulk of that is because of the pool being open.
Yep. Yep.
And you have the sufficient staff for that as you said, for the 8 weeks?
Yep. We actually, for the past several years, we've been working cooperatively with the Boys and Girls Club. And I'd like to give a big shout out to Marcia. She's our in-house, she's our aquatics director. She's an EMT. She's a certified Red Cross lifeguard and trainer. She is our instructor. We get to run our own Red Cross lifeguard training courses. Well, we target Holyoke kids, people, adults, neighborhood kids. We train them, we get them certified, and then even after they're certified, we get to work a lot on their skills for the lifeguards. We're one of the few cities who actually is fully staffed.
That's great. And I see something on here about the Senior Fest. Are you planning on having that this year?
Yes. I'm not sure. I talked to Neve. We've changed it in the last few years. We work cooperatively with Neve at the Council on Aging. I don't know that we're going to do exactly what we did last few years. We've been at the Summit House.
Right.
You know, we've had it in the fall, we've had it in late summer. We both agreed we're going to do Senior Fest, but it might be a little different and a little time frame, so people are comfortable to come.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Anyone else for Terry? Terry, I do have a question on 52701 staging.
Yeah.
15,000 to 10. What staging are we?
Staging has always actually kind of been used by a mayor. Staging has always been the city's contribution for the stage at Celebrate Holyoke, and a portion of it went to La Familia Family Festival for staging costs.
So are those events happening?
I don't believe either one will be happening this year. I'm pretty certain Celebrate Holyoke won't happen this year. I don't know if next spring the Family Festival will or will not. Nobody's contacted us yet.
Okay, that's what I was looking for.
Thing it's ever been used for. So that would revert back to the city. if those events didn't happen.
Okay. Anyone further? Counselor McGivern, are you logging in or you're on mute?
Actually, Mr. President, Terry's budget is pretty much self-explanatory. And as she told Councilor Bacon, a lot of the differences were COVID differences because of the nature of her budget. And I think we can all appreciate that. And Terry, look forward to a good year, much better year than last year.
I would like to say we still operate with 3 separate revolving funds, which really allows us to a lot more programming. We have a Roberts Field Fund and Community Field and a general fund. That affected a lot of what there was no revenue coming in last year, so we're rebuilding that, but we do a lot of programming with that money too.
All right. Well, I'll just point out, I know last year, budget time, Terry was very upfront saying due to COVID, there was a certain item that we could cut. It was a significant one. There was a heavy pushback by someone who's no longer here. And I, back then, I'll say today, appreciate you stepping up the way you did to help the city out. There was no need for the way things were towards you. I totally appreciated it. It was you being proactive to help us. So once again, I'm gonna go on record and say that. But you've been great to the city as department head, and it was great to see you tonight. Sorry it was so late. But once again, if there's anything that comes up prior to Monday, please let us know. But thank you very much. Have a wonderful night.
Thank you. Thank
Hey,
you.
Thank you.
Oh, wait, Counselor Tallman?
Yeah, one more thing, and I talked to Terry about you about 2 years ago. I did make it down to a ball game a couple of weeks ago, so don't forget our date. We're going to take you to a ball game down there sometime. Down in Mackenzie, okay? I'll let you know. They're playing usually on the weekend, so we could see you around. And I talked to one of your workers. They were doing a great job on the field, and I really had a great time down at the ball game at Mackenzie, the Blue Sox.
Thank you.
Don't forget, put it on your calendar, okay?
I've got the schedule. You tell me when you're ready.
I'll let you know.
Okay.
All right. Thanks.
Good night, everyone.
Good
Good
night.
night. Thank you.
All right. Well, that's all we have for all the departments. If there's any follow-up with anything that we've missed, let me know. We'll reach out to that department. I know veterans couldn't make it in. They had a scheduling conflict, but Jesus Pereira did send in some information and did offer, I think, one area to cut 20,000, I believe it was. So with that,
I would note, Mr. President, that our attendance is better in person.
Yeah.
Just saying.
It was a late one last night, though. I think people are sleeping.
Hey,
True.
budget hearings, Councilor Bacon, this is
we
right, Joe?
Yeah, we started out. We're doing very well for the budget, especially now that we expanded to get everyone in, all the department heads, so that way there's no cuts that they don't know about. But I appreciate it. Always great attendance, and I appreciate the support on the budget stuff and the great questions. So with that, we stayed way too late last night, so I'm not going to do that to you tonight. Have a great night, and if I don't see you, we'll see you Monday. So what was that? Monday at 6:30, right?
Is the budget meeting?
In-house.
Final meeting.
It'll be at the chamber. Yes.
Okay.
I checked with Jeffrey today. The reason we did this one is because Scott had a conflict and couldn't get certain equipment for Jeffrey to do the in-house.
Okay.
That won't happen Monday. We still do the hybrid like we did last night, but we can be in. Does that make sense?
Sounds good.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. President, Monday night, 6:30, is it 6:30?
Yes, Council Graney.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Well, have a great night, everyone.
You too.
Good night. Good job, Todd. We'll see you.